Gay Pride parade. Paul, a 33-year-old hardware store owner, was too shy to ask for a parade, but that didn't stop almost 2,000 residents from showing their support for his homosexuality. Mayor Sue Hallinan organized the parade and even chipped in some of her own money to pay for decorations.
Well, I was channel surfing one day and I came across a program about the Gay Pride. Next time I went to the hardware store, I said, Paul, we're going to throw you a parade. And he just said, oh, please don't do that. I don't want that. I beg you. He just didn't want us to go to the trouble.
He doesn't want to ride on the penis float. He gets motion sickness, so we're going to have him hold the reins instead.
And Pennictonians have already decided on a fairy tale theme for next year's parade.
Oh, that'll be great.
And if Paul has a boyfriend, they can both be dressed up as kings.
Terrific idea.
This is the Onion News Network.
You can stick it to the man and big tech. Join our FTL social mastodon at social.freetalklive.com. Free Talk Live.
Czechoslovakians, 1, 2, 3.
Just the Slovakians?
Czechoslovakians.
Oh. Why do we need to check on Slovakians?
It's just.
What are they doing? Is this a new Biden war?
No, it's Free Talk Live.
Oh, okay.
That's right. Live from New Hampshire. It's Saturday night. I don't know why I keep doing that. I should probably stop. But I am a fan of old school Saturday Night Live. You know, like Gilda Radner.
Okay.
Chevy Chase era.
All right.
Dan Aykroyd.
I've seen replays of those on like Comedy Central.
Eddie Murphy.
Yep.
As Mr. Robinson in Mr. Robinson's Neighborhood. Classic stuff, man. Just still funny today, too. I remember he was doing an episode of Mr. Robinson's Neighborhood, and Mr. T shows up.
Nice.
Right? And he sort of breaks down a door, I pity the fool who doesn't listen to Mr. Robinson, right? And then Mrs. T shows up, right? Who's just like this skinny character, right? With the mohawk and the chains and all that stuff, trying to act like Mr. T, right? I don't remember who the actress was that played it, but it was just classic stuff. Anyway, it is Free Talk Live.
Gumby?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Also, they used to do these like cartoon shorts. And
the Ambiguously Gay Duo?
That's the one.
Yep.
Yeah, that still sticks in my head.
Yep.
From back then. And
that
then
persisted onward because like I said, I saw those episodes in reruns, but I also watched the live show during like the Will Ferrell era. Those are always good.
I remember seeing Dexy's Midnight Runners as the special musical guest.
Okay.
Now, Dexy's Midnight Runners were a one-hit wonder out of the 80s. They had one song called Come On Eileen. And, it's this, sort of semi-rock tune, with a pop vibe to it, whatever. And it was very popular. Got a bunch of airplay. Everybody, when that song came on, everybody started shaking their booty. It was very catchy.
I can hear it in my head as we speak.
Big hook and all that kind of stuff. One of the absolute worst performances on Saturday Night Live of all time. The dude obviously had no business singing whatsoever.
Okay.
Out of tune, out of key, forgetting words,
Drunk?
That kind of stuff. I don't know. And like the band wasn't, they were out of sync in ways. And I was just like, what a horrible rendition of this song. I never want to hear this song again. And so, yeah, I remember that. Anyway, 603-283-6160 is the telephone number. It is Free Talk Live, talk radio that you can call in and talk about whatever's on your mind. We're going to talk about some stuff, and we generally talk about things from the perspective of peace, freedom, liberty, prosperity, stuff like that. Very libertarian / anarchist from a political point of view, if you want to call it that.
I don't know. Is it pre-show? You're like, you might have to change your definition of libertarian.
Because I'm punctual. Yeah. No,
Does that count?
I'm serious, man. Like, I have
to be... Is being late an act of aggression, Captain?
I don't know, but I like to...
Should we introduce the clockless mountaineer while we're on the top?
Yeah, in the studio tonight, it's myself, the captain.
Clockless mountaineer.
And?
Richie Rich.
We are I don't even actually know if we're expecting Peakless to show up or not. He got his vehicle stuck somehow, and then some stranger helped him out. And so then I was like, so are you on your way? And we don't actually know. So we'll see what happens. If not, we'll just proceed.
He mentioned the goodness in natives. And I will say this. I don't think I've ever been voluntarily late to the show.
Okay.
There was one time that I almost didn't make it exactly on time. And that's because I was doing a favor for Ian by grabbing his food at dinner before. He's like, bring me a plate. I'm like, sure thing, bud. And the restaurant held me up and I hustled as quickly as I could. Yeah. But there was also time that on my way here, my car broke down and there was no chance of me making it. Yeah. It wasn't going to happen. But while I'm sitting there, I think it was winter time or fall, about this time of year, almost this time of year, as I'm sitting there on the side of the road, waiting for the AAA and the ride to come get me, a handful of, good citizens, good Samaritans stopped by to check on me. So grateful for that, and can support Peakless's, the people around here are generally good in those types of situations.
Yeah, for certain. But back to the libertarian thing, there's a joke amongst libertarians that's it's called LST, that's Libertarian Standard Time. And basically it just means 15 minutes late.
Yeah.
Up to, thereabouts. Right?
Just set it for 15 minutes later, man.
And I don't know. A long time ago, I became a punctual person. It has helped me tremendously in my career, in working for others, because it helps me, make more money, get promoted, that kind of a thing. Because first of all, if you show up all the time, right, that's so many people just have it so wrong. It's just show up, man. That's most of having a job is just showing up. A job will tolerate a whole bunch of stuff from you as long as you're showing up consistently. They can depend on you showing up. And then if you can be punctual on top of that, right, that's going to get you noticed.
Yep.
There is this sort of false thing that happens in the corporate world where the appearance of working hard gets you promoted over production. Okay. So there might be a guy who's more productive than I am. In other words, has more output, better quality output than I do in the same position. But because I would be on time and be consistent with my attendance, I would get the nod for a promotion over that guy. Right. And it happened to me a couple of times. And that was the very specific reason that was told to me as to, why I got the nod over the other guy. Yep. So another person can do the same job better than you, but if they are inconsistent in their timing and inconsistent in their attendance, well, then, you're going to have to deal with that.
Well, and part of that, I would imagine, is the reliability of management, right? They have to be there before and stay later. And so even you may not be the best on the production line, but if you're early and stay late, right, you make up for that by being able to manage the production line, as opposed to the production line going, "Where's the boss?"
Right, right. So anyway, I tend to be more punctual than libertarians in general. I'm usually early. To me, if I'm on time, I'm late. This goes back to something called Lombardi time.
Yep.
This is Vince Lombardi, the famous coach of the Green Bay Packers football team, who set the clocks so that if it was 7 o'clock, it was really 6:45. So he gave him a 15-minute difference.
Yep.
And said things like, "Well, if you're on time, you're late." Right. So he wanted all of his people all the time to be early for everything.
I tend to think of it as just being respectful of who you're meeting, right? Your time is valuable, their time is valuable.
Well, and also, I like to get prepared for the day. I don't like to rush in at the last second.
Yeah.
If you're doing an hourly thing, you got to punch in.
That's work related. I'm just talking about one thing that libertarians ought to be good at is keeping their word.
Yes.
Right. And if I say to you, I will meet you at 7, and then I break my word, right, that should reflect poorly on me in all other relations. And if we're going to have a reputational score or social credit, that ought to factor in as well, right? Does he do what he says he's going to do or not, right? And if not, does he make excuses? Oh, well, this happened and this happened and this happened. Or does he just apologize for being late and offer a remedy?
Yeah.
How can I make this up to you now that I was, disrespectful of your time?
I remember Derek J., a longtime host here at Free Talk Live, went on to start AnyPay.
Yep.
And that kind of thing. He used to say all the time on the radio that as a libertarian, anarchist, voluntarist, whatever it is he claimed to be, that he wanted to be consistently principled.
Yes.
Right, across all his life. And that starts with just being consistent, right? It's hard to be consistently principled if in the rest of your life you're inconsistent.
Yep.
So the first step to becoming consistently principled is to just become consistent. Now, some people are consistent in that they're consistently, late or whatever, right? They're dependably undependable. That is a form of consistency.
Yep.
Right.
But then you don't count on them for anything important.
Right. Or you do things like, I'm having a party at 8:00 and it's really not going to start till like 8:30.
Sure. Whatever.
That type of a thing. You compensate for their
But then you get people like me who
consistency.
hear that and shows up at 8:00 because that's what time it starts.
Well, yeah, but then you get like, premium choice of the seat and
That is
premium
true.
choice of the food and, that kind of stuff too. There are benefits to being early, or at least on time.
On the monthly Manchester meetup for the New Mover Party,
Yeah.
I think there's only been 2 occasions in like the 5 years that I've been here where I didn't get my seat at the table. Like I'm like Norm at that place.
Always got the corner, the end.
I showed up 5 minutes late one day and someone was in my spot, so I sat on the other end of the table and someone was like, "Why are you sitting over here?"
Yeah.
Like, because that person is in my seat. I'm not going to kick him out because it's first come first serve, whatever. But remarkably consistent.
All right, so because we're talking about principles and libertarians, this from FEE, 3 principles for libertarians in times of war.
Ooh.
Now, I'm not sure what they're saying war is. Now, there seems to be an argument within the United States about, well, we're not at war because Congress hasn't officially declared a war.
Oh,
Right.
Okay. We're in an entanglement.
However,
It's a kinetic military action.
yeah, to me, like war actions equal war. If the United States government is bombing brown people, which they're still doing today, people don't talk about it much anymore. The news just sort of breezes over it if they mention it at all. But it's still happening.
Well, they didn't declare it, but they've got the war on terror, the war on drugs, the war on poverty.
Yeah.
They have all these different wars that they will label.
And then they're funding and training other people to also do warlike actions.
Yep.
So does that mean that, to me, yes, that's all war.
Yep.
To me, that's
I'm with
all
you.
war. So anyway, siding with freedom, the subheadline here, means siding with peaceful individuals and not nation states. The ongoing conflict between Israel and Hamas, that's what I'm calling it. Hamas.
All right.
I heard a British
Roast butt.
I heard a British broadcast, and the fighting between
Hamas.
Israel and Hamas, and I'm like, Hamas, yeah, okay. Seems to have brought out the worst in many people on both sides, not only in the sense of bloodthirst, of which there is sadly plenty, but also in the sense of letting emotion get in the way of clear moral reasoning. To a lesser extent, the Russia-Ukraine conflict has led to similar results. From the depths of social media to the heights of the ivory tower, the takes people have proffered on these conflicts have been straight up wild. Even those who are otherwise quite good on a lot of issues seem to have left their moral compass at the door when weighing in on this topic.
Is the Russia-Ukraine thing winding down? Do you get that feeling?
I don't think it has changed really at all, other than I could see why many people might get that feeling because, well, the people have taken down their Ukrainian flags off their Facebook profile or their Twitter or whatever, right? No one's really talking about that anymore. What I didn't see, though, was a bunch of people putting up like an Israeli or a Hamas flag, Hamas flag, on their profiles, right? Like, how come they didn't do that? How come they're not supporting them in that way? If they think that changing your profile pic on a social media platform is somehow supporting something, why didn't they follow suit?
I mean, that one's a little more tenuous, right? The reason I ask
again, be consistent. That's all I'm asking, right? Like, if you're consistent, then people can consistently depend on your action.
Yeah.
But if you're inconsistent, then why should anybody ever believe anything you do?
Because in the Israeli Hamas thing, the vast majority of people in that conflict would like to support the aggressors.
Either way, like put their flag up, right? Like if that's what you're going to support and that's your symbol of support,
all right,
right?
That's fair.
Like, where's the little circle around your face with I support the Hamas or I support the Israelis or whatever it is?
I get it. Because if you put that up against the Russia-Ukraine thing, they're on opposite sides of the aggressors.
It's so hilarious.
But the reason I bring up the Ukraine thing is because I keep seeing articles where there's fatigue on the American side to fund it, and they're planning on not funding it anymore, or they're not giving Ukraine as much.
Yeah.
And then I don't want to fall into the the sunk cost fallacy, right? But it seems as though there's so much sunk cost in it, right, that could have just not contributed to the inflationary pressures at home
and the debt
if they had just not done that to begin with.
Yeah.
But wrapping it up sooner, okay, good. But what did all that spending get you, except for a prolonged war, more debt, more dead, and the same outcome?
I mean, the only other thing I can think of is a bunch of people changing their picture on their social media profiles. That's that's an awfully high cost to get people to change their profile picture on social media. The article continues. In the midst of the deluge of bad takes, libertarians have an opportunity and a duty. I don't know if they have a duty, but to bring genuine moral clarity to bear on these issues. If we can be cool-headed and principled, especially in times of crisis, we will be that much more respected and that much more closer to winning the hearts and minds of the masses. But what does genuine moral clarity look like when it comes to war? What is the libertarian take? Here are 3 principles to help libertarians navigate this issue.
I'm against it.
You're against what?
War.
Oh, yeah, I am. Certainly. Like, I'm against the state as an organization, right?
Okay.
Government as an organization, who are the ones who do war.
Yep.
Right. In the absence of the state, you might have little skirmishes here and there.
There will always be conflict.
You might have the Hatfields and McCoys.
Sure.
Right. A couple families that get into it or whatever. You might have some tribal stuff, a la the Native Americans, something like that. But it's never going to be on the level that states are able to wage war because, the states borrow money to wage war at the size and duration with which they commit to it. And without that ability to borrow, you can bet your babushka that them wars would be real short.
Yeah, I'm still, you brought that up before, I'm still not convinced that it has anything to do with the money. It's the power and the demand.
Well, we can get into that, particularly should clockless mountaineer be replaced with a human.
Okay. What say you, clockless mountaineer? The time is.
So number 1, refuse to ignore, condone, or justify the slaughter of innocents. And being anti-war as I am, whenever there is slaughter of innocents, I try to speak up.
Yep.
Try to bring it up. Of course, I'm not aware of everything that goes on, of all of the innocents that are.
But when made aware.
I choose not to ignore. I choose not to condone or justify it. I choose to call it out for what it is: wrong, immoral, unethical, whatever you want to put on it. That is my stance.
Now, at the same time, you can call out the slaughter of innocents and also redirect blame where it ought to be placed, right? So I'm specifically thinking of, September 11th here in the United States, where there was a lot of quote unquote innocence in the building.
Yep.
And then everyone wanted to blame like those dirty brown people over there,
right?
Hate us for our freedom. But in the 9/11 Commission report itself, it was blowback was the term they used.
Yep.
For all of the aggressive actions that the United States federal government was doing in their country.
Yep.
Right. So you can condemn the act.
Yes.
And go, but look, it's because the United States is interfering all over the world that they feel the need to retaliate. And if you don't, if the United States government isn't doing those things all over the world, you'll create less terrorists and have less problems here.
For those of you new to Free Talk Live, I need to remind those who aren't that the United States of America is an empire. It is, in fact, the largest empire planet Earth has ever seen. It's got, I don't even know how many hundreds of bases now around the world.
Yep.
The largest military, the most money spent on military.
Well, that's what keeps us free, Captain.
By orders of magnitude.
If it weren't for the military, we'd be at a land invasion from Russia.
That's what keeps the empire afloat. That's what keeps the U.S. dollar, right? The U.S. dollar hasn't been backed by anything since before 1913.
Yep.
And then if it was sort of pseudo-backed by anything, that all went away. What, Roosevelt? No. FDR?
That sounds right.
Yeah.
And the going off the gold standard
right
in the 70s.
So, the last remnants of the gold standard, I think, were wiped away in the 70s. And
the confiscation in the 30s.
Yeah. And so the United States dollar right now is only backed by the full faith and force, the violence of the United States military. That's why it still has, quote, value, unquote, because no one has yet, no other, state or country or consortium has stood up to that.
Well, and my question is always, how much value does it have to lose before you say it no longer has value? Because we're in like the 99% in the last over 100 years.
Just recently, too, with gold hitting its all-time high.
Right.
The $1 today is worth 1 penny, according to what it was worth in 1913.
Okay, so
99% of the value of the dollar has gone away.
So, but that's not enough to say like it doesn't have any value.
Right.
Like we're a penny away from zero value.
Yeah.
But it's still considered valuable.
It's because it is the petrodollar, it's the world's trade currency, right? If you want to buy oil, you got to use United States dollars to buy oil.
But they're using a currency worth 99% less than it was initially.
Yeah.
Like who does that?
Yeah. So wait, does that mean that the $100 bill is the new one?
Yeah, it would be.
The $100 bill is a new one. 603-283-6160. We'll talk more about libertarian principles as they relate to war here on Free Talk Live. We've also got a couple other things in store tonight for you. So stick around. Give us a call. More coming up.
When commercials come on, don't push the button. Instead, listen. Even if you don't sell things for a living, you're still selling in the various conversations and transactions that make up your busy day. With money and attention so scarce now, effective communication skills have never been more important, especially if you're a job seeker. So take a lesson from Madison Avenue. Often the fewer words, the more effective the message. Like Jiffy Lube, where you never need an appointment, or the Office Max ad that says, you supply the ambition, we supply everything else. How about online ticket broker StubHub.com, the way in when it's sold out, or CyberCupid Match.com's seductive, go ahead, it's okay to look. How cleverly and succinctly can you distill your message? For more tips, hit survivalspeech.com. I'm Holland Cook.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Caroline Malone with the Week in Review. Hostilities are making humanitarian efforts nearly impossible in Gaza, according to the United Nations. Their agencies are warning there needs to be a ceasefire or thousands more people will die. The United States isn't supporting a ceasefire, but it has issued some of its strongest criticism of Israel's conduct in the war in Gaza since fighting began. US Secretary of State Antony Blinken said there was a gap between the Israeli government's intent to protect civilians and the mounting casualties on the ground. Sally Patterson has more.
Speaking in Washington, US Secretary of State Antony Blinken urged Israel to protect Palestinian civilians. According to the Hamas-run health ministry, more than 17,000 people have been killed since fighting began, following a surprise attack on Israel on October 7th. The White House says in a phone call with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, US President Joe Biden emphasized the critical need to protect civilians and to separate the civilian population from Hamas. An Israeli government spokesperson told reporters that Israel had put in place measures unprecedented in the history of warfare to keep civilians safe.
An Indian politician and opposition leader, also known to be a fierce critic of Prime Minister Narendra Modi and his party, was expelled from India's lower house of the parliament on Friday. The action comes after she was embroiled in a controversy over a bribery charge from October. Shurashi Mukherjee reports from New Delhi.
Mahua Moitra, member of the opposition party Trinamool Congress, was accused of asking questions in the parliament in exchange for money. She appeared before an ethics committee that started hearing this case from late October. The committee in its report declared that it found her actions to be highly objectionable, unethical, heinous and criminal. According to Indian law, a member of parliament can be expelled if the House votes in favour of the committee's report. Ms. Moitra's party strongly argued to allow her to defend herself, but the resolution was put to vote without allowing her to speak. She was expelled by a voice vote in the lower house of the Indian Parliament, and many members of opposition parties walked out as the vote was being conducted in protest. Shruti Mukherjee, New Delhi.
UK's Prime Minister Rishi Sunak is trying to convince Conservative MPs to back new legislation on the government's Rwanda migration plan. The new bill is meant to resurrect the government's flagship policy of sending asylum seekers to Rwanda. The Financial Times political editor George Parker says it's a major challenge for Sunak.
The problem for Rishi Sunak is that I think he's sort of fated to try to get this policy through because it's become such a totemic issue for the Conservatives. So he is going to persevere. There'll be the vote next week in the House of Commons on this new legislation. The problem is it's a massive advertisement for the fact that the government hasn't got a grip on illegal migration. And the longer this saga drags on, the more I suspect the public will just roll their eyes and basically say, well, believe it.
Don't miss a moment of Free Talk Live. Get our archives daily via our podcast at feeds.freetalklive.com.
Welcome back. Thank you for tuning in and listening to tonight's edition of Free Talk Live. In the studio tonight, it's myself, the captain.
And Richie Rich.
Before we go on, I need to tell you that this hour of Free Talk Live is brought to you by Dash, Digital Cash. Dash is the cryptocurrency designed to be used for spending. I actually used Dash at a website called defythegrid.com to buy some gold backs.
Nice.
Because they accept crypto. And I didn't know that they accepted Dash. I had previously made a very small purchase over there because I'm not wealthy, using Bitcoin. But I know Bitcoin's at about 44,000 right around now, I think is what it was before.
It's fluctuating around that, yeah.
Came to the show. And I know that when Bitcoin is on the upswing, the transaction fees escalate. And so I didn't want to get hosed by high transaction fees using Bitcoin. And I didn't even know that this website took more than just Bitcoin. And so sure enough, there was a drop down at the checkout for like which type of cryptocurrency would you like to use? And
very cool.
Dash. So And it was quick, and like it went through. I got an email from those guys. Yep, we got your order. No problem with the crypto and that kind of thing. So it's pretty sweet that way. Dash also, their transactions are instant, irreversible, and protected from 51% attacks by its chain locks technology. It's the world's first decentralized autonomous organization, and you can use it at Bitrefill. Bitrefill.com, I believe is the name of the site, for purchasing like gift cards. It's the holiday season. If you're doing any gift giving and you want to give gift cards instead of physical gifts, you can do so with crypto. Spritz.finance also allows for you to pay bills and even get some money into your bank if you need that for some reason. So it's easy to get, easy to use. It's also available in the Maya protocol, and you can learn more by visiting Dash.org. Big thanks to the Dash DAO for sending us 32 Dash per month to promote Dash on the air. Visit Dash.org to learn more about Dash. That's Dash.org. All right, so we've barely scraped the surface here. We're talking about this article from FEE, F-E-E, which stands for?
The Foundation for Economic Education.
And its headline is 3 Principles for Libertarians in Times of War. There was a bit of a lead-in, and the first principle was refusing to ignore, condone, or justify the slaughter of innocents. And so the article continues, there are better and worse ways to respond. Sadly, both sides in this conflict have been responding to the injustices committed against their people by committing injustices of their own.
Retaliation.
Further perpetuating the cycle of violence and giving the other side even more reason to lash out.
Who's going to stop it, though? Like, pick a conflict. The only side that, like, stops being violent is usually the side losing the fight to begin with.
Yeah.
And then you have to beg. You have to beg the other side to, like, stop being violent towards you because you couldn't muster up a suitable defense.
The answer is people. That is the answer. The people in the conflict. For whatever reason, human beings get worked up into a frenzy by, we'll call them political leaders, to go and kill other people.
Sure.
That they have no quarrel with.
Okay.
The Israel-Hamas conflict is a religious war, as I understand it.
Fair.
And so there's a little bit of, well, they're not my religion, and they're killing us, so we're going to go kill them. And it's like this. It has to be the people with the guns, the people with the bombs. They have to stop. They have to decide. Somehow, someone needs to get to these people. So I know they're not listening to this program. If they are, please put down your guns. Stop. Just stop. Stop fighting other people's wars. Stop fighting religious wars.
Sure. But there's an example, I don't have it in front of me, of some, Polynesian island nation or something that was full of pacifists. And then they were invaded by, an invading horde of oppressors or whatever. And because they're pacifists, they never fought back. And they lost like 95% of their population because the aggressors just wouldn't stop killing. They're like, well, if you're just going to sit there and like take it, then that's what happens. If you lay down your guns and they don't lay down theirs, you get eliminated.
When both sides kill innocent people, both sides need to be called out. We can debate the relative degree of evil being perpetrated, but there is no room for selectively ignoring acts of aggression against innocents. The existence of evil within both parties should be acknowledged and condemned by all.
Yeah, there's a term for it, collateral damage. That's it. They don't even count. The innocents are statistics.
Yeah.
In war. Their lives don't matter.
Yeah. So many people justify killing innocents with their argument that it's necessary for defense, and so the other side is really responsible for their deaths too. For example, in response to a perfectly civil and even-handed comment from Piers Morgan expressing heartbreak for both innocent victims on both sides, Ben Shapiro opined both are the fault of Hamas. But this makes absolutely no sense. Say a serial killer hides in an apartment building full of innocent civilians. Even if everyone were in complete agreement that the serial killer was guilty, dangerous, and deserved death, would it be moral to bomb the building, killing the murderer along with dozens of innocents? Clearly, this is ridiculous. In this misguided pursuit of defense, you just became an aggressor yourself.
It's ridiculous, but we've read stories on this show of cops doing that.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Oh, he ran into that house.
Yep.
And then they murked the whole house.
Yep. Chuck a couple grenades in there or whatever. Yep.
We're going to blow up the house to get the one guy rather than just wait it out. Who's got time for that? We've got grenades.
All right, moving along, let's go to number 2. Stand with individuals and not collectives. This is something that I see, we'll call them self-proclaimed libertarians, violating frequently.
Okay.
Libertarians believe in individual rights and individual responsibility, and nowhere is this more important than in war. Regrettably, collectivist rhetoric dominates these discussions, such as when entire people groups get called aggressors or defenders. So what is the individualist alternative? Simply put, we condemn the aggressors, that is, the individuals who are committing identifiable acts of aggression, whether on behalf of the government, terrorist organization, or other military group, or religion. They didn't put that in here. I'm adding that. Libertarians do not stand with one side of these conflicts or another. We do not stand with nations. We do not stand with tribes. We do not stand with governments. Rather, we stand with innocent civilians on all sides against those who seek to control them.
Okay. I want to caveat this because I don't know if I fall into this category of collectivizing. If you put on the uniform of the aggressor, you are no longer an innocent.
Oh, that's interesting. I mean, I don't know that that's true, factually speaking.
Well, then it's my opinion.
Because, like, you may put on the uniform, but until you actually commit aggression.
Yeah.
Right? I think you're still an individual or still an innocent at that point.
Okay.
Right? You might be thinking about it. You might be like signing up for it. You might be like, yep, gonna go and kill me some of these enemy people, and I'm gonna put on this uniform to go and do it.
So by the system's own definition, a mob is a single organism. If a mob is chasing down an individual and the individual defends himself by firing at the mob, and you are part of the mob who committed no act of aggression toward this individual, you don't have a claim against him because you participated in mob violence.
Angry mob chasing after you is not an act of aggression?
Well, who committed the act? If you're just a member of the mob.
Well, the mob is aggressing. If an angry mob is chasing after you, that is an act of aggression.
Okay. But there's no one member of the mob that's committed any act of violence yet. They're just walking down the street with the mob.
I see your point.
Right.
Murray Rothbard brilliantly exposes the collectivist mindset of war in his book For a New Liberty. And here's a quote. With the land area of the globe now parceled out among particular states, one of the basic doctrines and tactics of the rulers of each state has been to identify itself with the territory it governs. Since most men tend to love their homeland, the identification of that land and its population with the state is a means of making natural patriotism work to the state's advantage. If, then, Ruritania is attacked by Waldavia, the first task of the Ruritania state and its intellectuals is to convince the people of Ruritania that the attack is really upon them and not simply on the ruling class. In this way, a war between rulers is converted into war between peoples, with each people rushing to the defense of their rulers in the mistaken belief, I want to highlight mistaken belief, that the rulers are busily defending them.
Sure.
This divisive nationalism has been particularly successful in recent centuries. It was not very long ago, at least in Western Europe, when the mass of subjects regarded wars as irrelevant battles between various sets of nobles and their retinues.
Well, again, when it comes home to your country, because the governments of the opposing side, right, attack innocents, then it is against you. They're killing innocents trying to get at the government. Sure, but you're not safe. Your government clearly failed in protecting you.
Well,
how do you defend yourself?
Saying it's my government is overstepping, I think.
Well, there then for the people and their government.
Yeah, the government that claims ownership over you,
right,
is a more accurate term.
Like the attack on the innocents, right? Semantically, is an attack on the ruling class.
Yeah,
but it killed the working class.
Yeah.
So what is the working class going to do? They're supposed to be protected by their government.
Well,
the government failed to do. Supposed to be. Whatever. If you want to get into semantics, we can.
Well, I'm just saying
that's
should
the general thinking.
That should be a lesson to individuals: is that your government does not protect you.
Okay. So how do you if we're going individual on individual?
Yeah.
How do you hold accountable the pilot or the guy with the button that dropped the bomb?
These are very good questions.
That's why you can't do it on an individual basis. You put on the uniform, you're part of it.
Later in the book, Rothbard eviscerates the idea that a defender state has any right to defend itself from an aggressor state. The idea of entering a war in order to stop aggression is clearly an analogy from aggression by one individual upon another, Rothbard writes. Just as Jones has the right to defend himself when Smith beats him up, many argue a defending state has an equivalent right to wage a defensive war when it is invaded by agents of another state. It also follows that other countries can intervene on behalf of the defender state, since this would be the equivalent of police action. But aggression only makes sense on the individual Smith-Jones level, as does the very term police action. Rothbard continues, these terms make no sense whatsoever on an interstate level. Why is that? Rothbard lays out his reasoning in no uncertain terms. First, we've seen that governments entering war thereby become aggressors themselves against innocent civilians. Indeed, become mass murderers. The correct analogy to individual action would be Smith beats up Jones, the police rush in to help Jones, and in the course of trying to apprehend Smith, the police bomb a city block and murder thousands of people, or spray machine gun fire into an innocent crowd. This is a far more accurate analogy, for that is what a warring government does. And in the 20th century, it does so on a monumental scale. By any police agency that behaves this way itself becomes a criminal aggressor, often far more so than the original Smith who began the affair.
Okay, so now you have an aggressor police state.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack there.
An individual in the aggressor police state commits an act of aggression. He runs back into the collective, right, of his police state cronies. How do you hold them accountable? On an individual level. Give out the number. I want to know.
603-283-6160. If you want to weigh in, you want to answer Rich's question for him. Even if the Smith-Jones analogy is granted, Rothbard is saying the proponents of defensive wars have no case. The very analogy they appeal to in order to justify their position actually undermines it. There's a little bit more here about this one, but I want to move on to the third one, just in the interest of time today. Number 3, champion non-interventionist foreign policy.
Oh, yeah, that one's easy.
This is, I mean, I've got to be a broken record on this show by now by going, the United States has no business funding anything outside of the United States. They don't even have any business taxing everybody inside the United States, much less taking the money that they've stolen from you and giving it to other countries for the use of war. Giving them weapons, giving them ammunition, sending people over to train them on how to do war, and be warlike, and all that kind of a thing. It is just no one's business.
Yep.
They should stay out, allow other people in other lands to figure stuff out for themselves. There's no need to build an empire. All that.
Well, we are safer here at home, Captain, if we get to pick the rulers of other countries who are favorable to America.
You're still violating the NAP.
I got it. Not everyone's a libertarian.
I know. But this story specifically is 3 principles for libertarians surrounding war. America has a long history of non-interventionism. Do they?
No.
Wow, what a unfactual statement. I mean, perhaps they do up until 100 years ago. You know,
I
mean, the country's only 250 years old, something like that. You know,
I don't know how you can be at war for like 90% of that and have a long history of non-intervention.
Yeah,
you're intervening somewhere. The War of Northern Aggression.
The article goes on to say interventionism has many issues associated with it. Okay, I can get down with that. First, when a government intervenes in a foreign conflict on behalf of one side, millions of taxpayers are forced to fund an initiative they deeply disagree with. This is where the violation of the NAP comes in. Forcing anybody to fund anything that they didn't ask for, didn't give their consent for, is a violation of the NAP.
Yeah, there's a lot of people that support the war, though.
Great, then they should get off their couch and take up some arms and get their ass over to wherever the hell it is.
Yeah.
They support the war at, and see how good they can do at it,
or fund it.
Yeah, pick up a part-time job and send all that money to your defender or offender of choice if you want to help fund it. That's fine by me. Just don't force me to pay for any of it. Don't take any money from me or anybody else that hasn't given consent. Perhaps they are rooting for the other side, or perhaps they simply want no part in this conflict, regardless of their reasons for opposing intervention. The point is that they are being coerced into funding a cause against their will. This is simply unjust. People should not be forced to fund things, especially wars, that they don't agree with. If you personally want to get involved, feel free to do so out of your own pocket. We've covered this.
Well, they used to sell war bonds, too. We need money for the war. Support your government by buying war bonds.
Man, I ran across one of these, it's like an old poster from like World War II or World War I. I'm not sure which one. But it was one of these. It felt very libertarian to me. It was like, hey, help us out, grow or start raising chickens in your yard. If every household has chickens in their yard, why, we'll be able to get through this wartime. And I was like, that's weird that they're like, at some point the government was like, yeah, you should like have some chickens, get a garden going. You should be self-sufficient. Now the government doesn't want that at all.
Well, because at the time it benefited their war.
Right. So yeah, it is interesting.
They'll cycle back to it if it's in their interest.
If it's in their interest, right? Yes. But I just found that I'm like, this is so bizarre. Like government propaganda is,
it's whatever it needs to be.
Yeah. At the time.
Yeah.
And if you take it out of time and put it into a different time, it's ridiculous. You're like, what the hell?
Who would believe this?
Yeah. But totally at the time, it totally what everybody bought into.
Future generation is going to look back at this one, same thing.
Yeah.
How did you morons fall for this?
Oh, yeah.
It was so obvious in retrospect.
People say that about, like, Nazi Germany. They're like, how did they let that happen? It was so obvious. But, I mean, look at what happened with COVID, man. That was almost global. What's the word I'm looking for? The phrase? When the military takes over?
Martial law?
Martial law. Nearly martial law across the globe. Because all of these governments started doing the same things to their people.
Yep.
And fortunately, they didn't get any further than they did. I'm surprised they got as far as they did, but a lot of people were very outspoken. People I didn't think would speak out started speaking out, and I'm grateful for everyone who did speak out. I think it was, a long time coming. I think it took way too long for people to start speaking out and that kind of a thing.
The libertarian movement here, at least part of it, or individuals within it, were gripped by fear.
Right.
And so they all of a sudden came down on the side of the state.
Yep.
saying like, you dirty hippie libertarians, stop throwing your parties, stop congregating with each other, because the state won't take their boot off my neck until you guys get in line and stay home.
Yeah, that's not how compliance works.
2 weeks to flatten the curve.
Yeah, open a freaking history book. At no time,
or don't, because it's written by the winners.
Yeah.
Imagine that.
And
Good guys always win in the history books.
The author continues, and if the coercive means of raising money isn't bad enough, consider what the money is being used for. These funds are being used, amongst other things, to kill thousands of innocent civilians. As such, the politicians and bureaucrats facilitating this fundraising are quite literally acting as an accessory to murder. People forget this about politicians all the time. They are accessories to every crime the state commits.
So let's go back to the innocence part of this article.
Mm-hmm.
If you are complicit in paying your taxes and funding the state's war machine, are you really an innocent?
Well, funding in your context is via taxation, which is under duress.
It's under duress for like libertarians. There's a lot of people out there that are joyous in paying their taxes, which is why when tax protesters...
I've never met anybody who's like, oh, yay, it's tax time.
Oh, do you want me to find a tweet?
I get to pay my taxes.
You want me to find a tweet of the rich people going like...
I'm not saying those people don't exist.
I wish I were taxed more.
I'm not saying those people don't exist, but I think they're few and far between. I think that the majority of people, at least in the United States, if they were told, hey, guess what? You don't have to file or pay taxes anymore, they wouldn't.
Okay. And outside of libertarian circles, you don't hear the taxes are the price we pay for civilized society more frequently than you'd like?
I mean, I haven't heard that in a while, but then again, I
run in libertarian
circles. So, yeah.
Get out more. They exist.
No, that's why I came here. I get it. Around that.
I get it. But then this is the problem. This is another problem with libertarians, right? At least here, we're so insulated within our own community. It's hard to see what's going on and what, like, Mr. and Mrs. America think about things.
I've still got plenty of, like, we'll call them normie friends, not in New Hampshire.
Okay.
In fact, I showed somebody back in the Seattle area the video of like one of the mask protests that we had here in Keene at the grocery store for not letting a disabled person in without wearing a mask or whatever. And they said, man, if you tried something like that in Seattle proper, I think you'd get shot. 603-283-6160. More Free Talk Live. Hour number 2 is coming up. Still to come. What's going on in Brazil?
Free Talk Live.
The people that fought the Korean War and, frankly, the Afghan War won because those people are the military-industrial complex. And what they wanted is they want things that go boom to go boom so that they can build more things that go boom. That the purpose of the war isn't freedom, it's not justice, it's not any of these higher concepts that, in fact, that the lives, minds, and bodies of the people that are going out there and fighting for these wars, that they are inconsequential to the politicians and the people for whom they work.
So you're saying the state won these wars, Vietnam and Afghanistan. The state won, but the individuals who fought the war, they're the ones that took the brunt of it. They're the ones that lost.
That's right.
And I totally agree. They do enough to make it seem like they're doing something and to keep us happy enough just to control us.
Free Talk Live, 7 nights a week from 7 to 10 Eastern at freetalklive.com.
My name is Jacob Hornberger. I'm president of the Future of Freedom Foundation, which Congressman Ron Paul awarded for having an outstanding freedom website. Write us at fff@fff.org, and we'll send you a free 3-month subscription to our monthly journal of libertarian essays and our booklet, Economic Liberty in the Constitution, which George Mason University economics professor Walter Williams praised in a recent column. That's fff@fff.org.
What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. 0191. The Free Talk Live listen line, 641-793-0191.
You're listening to the live edition of Free Talk Live. Hour number 2 is next after the news here on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Caroline Malone with the Week in Review. Hostilities are making humanitarian efforts nearly impossible in Gaza, according to the United Nations. Their agencies are warning there needs to be a ceasefire or thousands more people will die. The United States isn't supporting a ceasefire, but it has issued some of its strongest criticism of Israel's conduct in the war in Gaza since fighting began. US Secretary of State Antony Blinken said there was a gap between the Israeli government's intent to protect civilians and the mounting casualties on the ground. Sally Patterson has more.
Speaking in Washington, US Secretary of State Antony Blinken urged Israel to protect Palestinian civilians. According to the Hamas-run health ministry, more than 17,000 people have been killed since fighting began, following a surprise attack on Israel on October 7th. The White House says in a phone call with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, US President Joe Biden emphasized the critical need to protect civilians and to separate the civilian population from Hamas. An Israeli government spokesperson told reporters that Israel had put in place measures unprecedented in the history of warfare to keep civilians safe. Sally Patterson, New York.
An Indian politician and opposition leader, also known to be a fierce critic of Prime Minister Narendra Modi and his party, was expelled from India's lower house of the parliament on Friday. The action comes after she was embroiled in a controversy over a bribery charge from October. Shirashi Mukherjee reports from New Delhi.
Mahua Moitra, member of the opposition party Trinamool Congress, was accused of asking questions in the parliament in exchange for money. She appeared before an ethics committee that started hearing this case from late October. The committee in its report declared that it found her actions to be highly objectionable, unethical, heinous and criminal. According to Indian law, a member of parliament can be expelled if the House votes in favour of the committee's report. Ms. Moitra's party strongly argued to allow her to defend herself, but the resolution was put to vote without allowing her to speak. She was expelled by a voice vote in the lower house of the Indian Parliament, and many members of opposition parties walked out as the vote was being conducted in protest. Shirashi Mukherjee, New Delhi.
UK's Prime Minister Rishi Sunak is trying to convince Conservative MPs to back new legislation on the government's Rwanda migration plan. The new bill is meant to resurrect the government's flagship policy of sending asylum seekers to Rwanda, but it's angered many on the right of his party. The Financial Times political editor George Parker says it's a major challenge for Sunak.
The problem for Rishi Sunak is that I think he's sort of fated to try to get this policy through because it's become such a totemic issue for the Conservatives. So he is going to persevere. There'll be the vote next week in the House of Commons on this new legislation. The problem is it's a massive advertisement for the fact that the government hasn't got a grip on illegal migration. And the longer this saga drags on, the more I suspect the public will just roll their eyes and basically say, we'll believe it when we see it.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN. US President Biden's push to pass tens of billions of dollars in new aid for Ukraine has stalled in the Senate. Republican lawmakers blocked the funding, which also includes help for Israel. They want the funding to include additional border security and a focus on immigration, and refuse to fund Ukraine without it. Kate Fisher reports from Washington.
Republicans are insisting that any foreign aid must be accompanied by major changes to border security policy. President Biden's accused them of playing chicken with US national security. The White House has warned that funding for Ukraine will run out by the end of the year without congressional action.
A coral reef in the French Polynesian island of Tahiti has been damaged as a result of construction efforts for the 2024 Olympics. Tahiti is hosting the Olympic surfing competition, with the main summer games happening in France. But plans to build a large judges' tower for the event have been surrounded by controversy, and this latest development has meant the construction is paused. Simon Gaitan reports.
The International Surfing Association says it welcomes the French Polynesian government's decision to pause construction of a controversial judges' tower in Tahiti for the 2024 Olympic surfing. The announcement comes after a barge involved in the construction damaged the Te Ahupo coral reef. Groups in opposition to the construction of the judging tower released a video showing the barge propeller appearing to become stuck on the shallow reef, damaging the coral in the process. The ISA expressed sadness and surprise at the coral damage. However, local opponents of the construction warned of the risk posed by plans to build a large judges tower in the reef. Simon Gaitan, Paris.
I'm Caroline Malone in Washington, and that was The Week in...
In order to more accurately portray the risks of smoking, the FDA has approved putting a picture of Trish on the cover of all cigarette packs. Clinical trials suggest that images of diseased organs, corpses, and deformed infants all prove less effective than a single photograph of Trish smiling. Smokers can expect to see the graphic campaign as early as next month, paired with a simple line of text that reads, "Cigarettes cause Trish." In Science News, a new study finds that every style of parenting inevitably produces disturbed and miserable adults.
Despite a great variance in parenting styles across populations, from overprotective to permissive, the end product is always the same, a profoundly flawed and joyless human being.
One bright note of the study, adults can find temporary happiness when they're able to perpetuate the cycle of human misery by having children. In other news, the Pulitzer Board adds a giant pumpkin category, and a local man's utter failure in life is a bit of a sore spot. For more news, visit theonion.com/newsbeat.
This is the Onion News Network.
We're still not sure why you'd want to watch, but our video feed is streaming nightly for free at cam.freetalklive.com. Free Talk Live.
Free Talk Live. Free Talk Live. Right.
We're going to freestyle on the radio because it's Free Talk Live.
Freedom of speech, right?
Allegedly.
603-283-6160. 603-283-6160. That's the number here in the studio if you'd like to join us. It is a live call-in talk radio program. We've been talking about libertarians and principles and how it relates to war. There was an article from fee.org, 3 principles for libertarians in times of war. It is human, of course, to react to fear. When fear is presented, it is human to, have a reaction, to become illogical, even irrational when filled with fear. So,
I mean, that's two motivators, man, away from pain or towards pleasure.
And so that is something that freedom-oriented people, libertarians, anarchists, voluntarists, whatever, need to keep in mind, particularly when politicians are, shoving some crap down your throat.
It's election season.
Yeah.
There's been debates and presentations.
Yeah, be aware
town halls.
Be aware of, what episode and season of, the United States you're in. Or if you're outside of the United States, like, keep track of whatever, government claims that to own you and what season it is for them as well. Before we go on, I want to remind you about Fork Fest. It's coming up in June. You can join liberty-minded voluntarists, anarchists, and libertarians June 13th through the 16th for the 8th annual Fork Fest at Rogers Campground in the beautiful White Mountains of New Hampshire. Fork Fest is a fork of the Porcupine Freedom Festival, which has sold out in recent years. Fork Fest happens, it's funny how that's worded, which has sold out. And recently, there's 2 meanings to the phrase sell out.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
Well played.
It's interesting that's in there. Fork Fest happens the week before the Porcupine Freedom Festival. Fork Fest is decentralized, which means there's no ticket cost and no one is in charge. All you have to do to join the fun is reserve your camping site, your RV site, or your motel room with Rogers Campground for June 13th through the 16th. You can find out more at the unofficial website, forkfest.party. You can also connect with other attendees on the Forkfest Telegram and Matrix chat rooms, as well as the Forkfest Forum. You can find links to those at forkfest.party. We hope to see you there June 13th through the 16th, forkfest.party.
Now that RFK has said that he's been on the Epstein plane, is he still like the libertarians' boy on the Democrat side?
Oh God, I hope not.
Okay, just checking. He was their boy at the last pork fash.
I keep seeing self-appointed libertarians supporting RFK, Vivek, or what's the broad's
Nikki
name?
Haley?
Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh my God, do you guys like? I don't understand how you can call yourself a libertarian and not see through the crap, the BS, the lies. Right? These are people who are after power.
No, Captain, we see through it, but they're still the best alternative we have.
No, how about rule yourself? That's the best alternative you have.
Yeah.
The only winning move is not to play. Thank you, War Games.
Yeah, I take issue with that because there's, like they couldn't figure out one way to win a game of tic-tac-toe.
I thought you meant with like libertarians and like, voting and stuff like that.
Well, that too, but War Games the movie.
There is an argument about voting in self-defense, right? I can't say that like that's not a valid argument. It's an argument. And some people use it and like, well, this one, but like to me, it's not valid because you are still forcing other people to your preference.
Yep.
If it goes your way, if you vote for somebody for some reason at any level of government and it goes your way, you are now forcing your preference onto other people, even if that happens to be my preference as well, right? You want to vote for like less laws. Okay. To a lot of libertarians, that's a win. That's what you want, right? You want a reduction in government. And like, I get that, but like, you're still violating the non-aggression principle by forcing other people to your preference. Using government is to get your way is a violation of the NEP.
One of the difficulties with the gun in the room analogy
yes.
that everyone used to like to use.
Yes, I still do from time to time.
Okay. Well, the safest place to be is holding the gun.
Well, okay, but you're still using coercion.
I get it.
Right.
But the way the gun is not pointed at you is to make sure it's pointed at somebody else.
Yeah.
Or to the ground. I don't care which. Holster it. But unless you have the gun, right, you are in danger of it being pointed at you.
That's why you decentralize all the guns, and then now everybody has one.
Yeah, mutually assured destruction.
Well, I don't have a problem. If everybody is allowed to arm themselves to their heart's content, I don't have a problem with dealing with an occasional psychopath on an individual basis, or even like in like my neighborhood or something like that, because I can deal with them on an individual basis.
Yeah.
To my satisfaction. Whereas if it is something voted on, an organization of largesse, such as a government, there's no way to deal with that to your individual satisfaction.
That's kind of what my point was earlier with the uniform. How are you going to deal with it on an individual level? You can't. They are hidden within the collective on an individual level.
All right, so we talked a bit about these principles. We talked about that kind of stuff. I wanted to talk about, because you and I both had the same story for show prep today, and it's a very, very short story.
But it's funny.
Wait, no, it's not that short.
Oh.
I was thinking of a different one.
Oh, which one were you thinking?
I was thinking of...
Don't spoil it.
Okay, well, I won't spoil it, but we'll talk about that one should we have time on tonight's show.
Unless you call.
603-283-6160.
Then we'll talk about what you want.
This, I teased going to the break. What's going on in Brazil? Well, everybody's familiar with AI. That's artificial intelligence. Right?
Taking over the world.
ChatGPT.
Bard.
What's the Twitter one now? Grok.
Oh, is that what that is?
Yeah.
Okay.
Or supposedly is. I don't know what it actually is. It's there. Supposedly you can use it if you subscribe.
I've seen a couple Elon tweets about Grok. I had no idea what it was.
They sent me the most ridiculous. I logged into the Twitter, and they sent me. I'm just going to pull it up right now because, first of all, if you're a professional organization and you are trying to get somebody to give you money for something that was previously free.
Yep.
Right. So signing up for these social media sites, generally no cost to you because you are the product or service They're collecting data on you and your habits and turn around selling that. That's how they make money. Everybody's known this for a long time. If you didn't know that, well, surprise, that's what they're doing.
And I'm still the anomaly within this group of people that go like, I will take personalized ads. It's better than the random nonsense you're going to get in.
Yeah, I mean, like I'm on here, so obviously I'm okay with them sending some ads as I scroll through or whatever. It's fine, right?
And I've purchased off social media before.
But if you're a professional organization and you're trying to, advertise to entice people to sign up for a thing, right? They should know enough about me to know that if they give me a pitch, a sentence, a phrase, a paragraph that is horribly worded, horribly punctuated, that it's going to have the exact opposite effect. It's going to A, make me ignore their message completely, B, ridicule them about that, and C, really never want to give them any money voluntarily.
Okay.
Right, outside of the ads scrolling by, right?
So you're a grammar Nazi.
To
I'm
an extent,
not buying from anyone with a typo.
But no. It's not just a simple typo. Listen to this.
All right, fair.
Go ad free in for you with Premium Plus.
Go ad free.
For you. And also all of there's two words that are not capitalized. In and with.
Okay.
Go is capitalized, ad is capitalized, free is capitalized, in is not. For is capitalized, you is capitalized, the word you. With is not. And then premium is capitalized with the plus sign after it. Here's a screenshot. I actually took a screenshot of it and highlighted it and reposted it on Twitter going,
the in for you is the only thing that doesn't make
Tango
sense.
Foxtrot is this. What the FCC were they thinking? Somebody speculated that this is actually an AI-generated ad.
Okay.
And I'm like, well, then it's just artificial. There's no intelligence behind this whatsoever.
If they're trying to promote Grok, then it very well could be. But if they had left out the in for you, it makes sense, right? Go ad free with Premium Plus.
Right, yeah, but go ad free in for that's a nonsense. That's not even a phrase. It's not a sentence. Right. There is no punctuation.
It's not even common parlance.
Yeah, I don't even mind the lack of punctuation. But if you're going to advertise to me, don't advertise nonsense.
Got it. That's how I know
they should know this with the amount that I scroll, and if there is an ad that I click on, right, they should know this. They've collected tons of data on me from my scrolling activities over the course of however the hell long I've had this Twitter account.
This is how I know Premium Plus is a Nigerian scam.
So anyway, people are familiar with the concept of AI. Many people have gone on and used a version of ChatGPT or monkeyed around with it or had it try and generate.
I have monkeyed around with Bard.
Bard?
A little bit.
All right. I haven't monkeyed around with any of this.
Okay.
Outside of in one of my jobs, I have, I used to have the responsibility of doing voice work, voice recordings for telephone systems.
I knew I've heard your voice on some call center recording before.
Totally. However, AI now is able to generate incredibly human-sounding fake voices. And by fake, I mean artificial voices.
Yep.
So it used to be an artificial voice would have these weird, and you could tell that it was artificial. AI has made that a thing of the past.
Well, and before AI came to prominence within the last year, Google had the Google Assistant that they were promoting that was realistically sounding,
right?
For tasks,
right? And so all of that has now come to fruition within the we'll call it the telephone industry, where now if you're using one of these artificial voices for your phone system, and you want to change one person's name, you're because you'll hear a recording to reach Bob, press 1, for Jim, press 2, for Jane, press 3. Well, if Bob gets fired and Bill gets hired, normally you have to go record a thing again, the whole sound file of all of the names. If you're a good recording engineer, perhaps you've saved that and you can go in and just go Bill and then cut and paste and fly that in, but it oftentimes doesn't sound flow right, and you have to record the whole thing, and it usually takes less time just to record the whole thing anyway. Well, now it's just a text box, so you just highlight Bob and replace it with Bill and hit save, and the voice automatically changes. The flow is great. The timbre is fine. It sounds, and there's different styles, different. It used to be you had to pay for these things. You had to hire some voice talent from a voice talent company and all this kind of stuff. And if your business was multilingual, well, you had to hire multiple people. Or if you got lucky, you could find like one person that spoke many languages and that kind of a thing to do that. Those are the guys who are making real money in that.
Are you okay with this? Because it seems like it would ease some of the workload. And all right.
Well, I am, because I'm old.
Okay.
And I say that because the freelance clients that I have currently still call me, because I've been doing their system for, 5, 10, 15 years, whatever it is, 20 years. And they know my work, and they're happy to pay me because I get it done quickly and all that kind of stuff. They might not even be aware that their system can do it another way.
Okay.
But they just don't care.
Yeah.
Most of the time in the course of a corporate world business, right, they want the thing that takes the least amount of effort and time.
Yeah.
And so for them, it's like, send me an email, give me a call, leave me a voicemail, be like, hey, this is Jan from XYZ company. We need you to redo the list of the employees again, or it's the annual time for that here. They'll just send me what they need done, and I'll do it, and I'll reply, and it'll be done. So because I provide a good service and I'm punctual and all that kind of stuff, I have lost clients because of this, but I still have some freelance clients that are like, no, we're just going to do it this way.
Okay. I mean, it's one thing to lose clients and be okay with it. It's another thing to go this ought to come to an end.
Yeah, no, technology, I've made an entire career accidentally out of technology, right? Still to this day, the reason that I am employable is because my Google foo, if you will, my ability to search stuff is stronger than the average person.
Okay.
Right? Particularly when it comes to doing support stuff. So if I go to work for a company and I am troubleshooting a specific product, but it's connected to other products that we don't support, you're supposed to give best effort to solve the problem before you ask the client to contact, whatever vendor or whatever provider of the other thing is. But you give a best effort thing. Well, oftentimes you can just go online, do a little search for hey, how do I do this? Oh, yeah, you unplug, you plug back, or you could reboot here.
Let me Google that for you.
Yeah, LMGTFY. And so, I've made a career out of being able to do that, being able to solve problems on the fly, because I have the ability to search things and get the answers and fix the problem and make people happy.
Nice.
Right. So and every time there is a new technology or a new version of something that comes along, or something that QA automation for software, right? That a lot of people lost their jobs when automation came around, but who kept their jobs? Those who adapted, and learned how to run the automation.
Yeah.
Instead of doing the QA part, they learned how to do the automation part, right? And that is what kept them above. So,
can you program the AI?
This came up recently. Somebody was talking about alpha, right? Like alpha male.
Oh, okay.
Right? That kind of a thing. What makes an alpha male? People have this sort of romanticized,
bald head, big muscles, tiny voice,
something, right? It's a muscular, tall, right? Carrying an axe, looking like a lumber. I don't know, whatever, right? Some people have a vision in their head of what an alpha male looks like. Well, it turns out that the alpha is not even the strongest. It's not even the smartest. It's the most adaptable.
Okay.
So as a human being, the more adaptable you are to an environment, to a situation, to something new coming along, the more success you're going to have. I don't care what it is, right? Adaptation is what has made survival, really, but that's adaptation. Adaptation is what has made human beings continue to survive all of this time. So the better you are at adapting, the better off you're going to be, the more success you're going to have. So I have adapted to technology because, I started getting into it when it was still analog.
Yep.
Right? Analog recording, right? All that kind of stuff, pushing buttons, actual buttons, doing editing 2-inch 24-track tape with a razor blade and some actual tape, taping pieces of tape together to make, a verse goes into a chorus now, that kind of a thing. And then that all got turned into software over the course of time. And I could have been like, no, screw that. You're putting these tape cutters out of work, which is true.
You were. Yeah,
and
you
still,
absolutely were.
And still, there's a couple of guys out there that, if you need some tape cut, Grandpa Tape Cutter going to come walking through that door, and he's going to do a better job of it than anybody else. But, those are few and far between. I'm kind of that guy on the telephone side of stuff right now. I'm the old guy who still does the voices for a few systems, right? But by and large, I've been replaced.
You're going to end up with a government job because they're using the most outdated technology available, and you're going to be the only guy left to call.
No, I'm adaptable.
Okay,
right. So,
you're adaptable, but they're not, right? So they have the old tech.
Right.
They need someone who can use the old tech. And the new people coming along, the youngins, aren't going to be able to use the new tech. It's like there was an article some time ago. The PC that the school lights were connected to in some state was such on an old thing that no one could turn the lights off because no one knew where the wires were running to and how to run the program.
You mean the lights within a school?
Just stayed on permanently because they couldn't figure out the programming on how to turn the lights because the system was so old and the programmer passed or moved on or whatever.
Yeah, there's no YouTube video for that.
There's nothing.
Yeah. I bumped into stuff like that too with old telephone systems. They call them premise systems.
Yeah.
Where you have a business location, you got a closet with a bunch of rack mount gear in it. People are like, are those computers? Nope. What is that? That's the phones.
There's a nuclear station somewhere that's running on floppy disks.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Forget about it.
So adaptability is really the point of my rant. If you want to go further in life, you want to be more successful, you want to be more on top of it, be adaptable. I don't know.
That's good advice.
I don't know how individually you go about doing that. That's up to you. But if you can be adaptable to your situation, you will go much further.
A good place to start is be gullible, first of all.
What?
Well, because in order to be adaptable, you have to be open to new things, and people who are closed-minded and hard-nosed about things don't open themselves up.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean gullible.
Well, but you have to believe something different than what's already in your head.
That's different than being gullible.
Okay.
Being gullible is like falling for it, right? Well, falling for somebody else's BS.
Well, but it's not necessarily BS. That's what I'm saying.
I see.
You have to fall for it.
Be open-minded.
Yeah.
That's different than being gullible. Being gullible is like being a sucker.
Now we're parsing semantics again.
Yeah, definitions are a thing for a reason.
Okay. Well, let's look up gullible. Continue.
Okay. If you say it really slowly, orange sounds just like gullible.
See, but in order to be open to that thought, I'd have to try it.
Right. But if you were gullible, you'd just believe and be like, what? And then you'd go, orange. Oh, no. Okay. What does it say? What does the magic rectangle say, Richie Rich?
Easily persuaded to believe something.
Okay. There you go. So what's going on in Brazil? What have they done using AI? Well, this from the AP. Brazilian city enacts an ordinance that was secretly written by ChatGPT.
Nice. And it passed all the muster. Passed the sniff test.
Now,
the politicians went, yeah, that's right. That ought to be a law.
Now, we haven't even gotten into the meat of the article, but the first thought off the top of my head is, well, at least you know that AI actually read the thing before it submitted it.
Maybe. I mean,
well, it composed it.
They composed it.
So it had to have, ingested the text in some way, shape, or form, as opposed to what we know happens with politicians.
Doesn't mean it comprehended it, though.
I mean, okay, right. But I don't have that expectation for politicians either, right?
Fair enough.
603-283-6160. We'll find out more about what's going on in Brazil with this. Is this legislation by AI? Is this lawmaking by AI? Is this coming soon to you? It's Free Talk Live.
Hi, I'm Derek J. To me, an activist's calling is to actively work to advance a cause. The cause for which I work is personal freedom. I believe my life is best when I engage in voluntary interactions and self-government. I reject the idea that anyone else has a higher claim to my life or my body than I do. I see people who call themselves the government as a threat to my personal freedom. I realize you may feel differently, but my relationship with the people who call themselves the government is completely involuntary. If Starbucks used some of its money to drop bombs, I wouldn't shop there. So why would I support the American empire? The empire does not require my consent.
Derek J's Victimless Crime Spree. Watch it for free and order the Director's Cut DVD at victimlesscrimespree.com. That's victimlesscrimespree.com.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Caroline Malone with the Week in Review. Hostilities are making humanitarian efforts nearly impossible in Gaza, according to the United Nations. Their agencies are warning there needs to be a ceasefire or thousands more people will die. The United States isn't supporting a ceasefire, but it has issued some of its strongest criticism of Israel's conduct in the war in Gaza since fighting began. US Secretary of State Antony Blinken said there was a gap between the Israeli government's intent to protect civilians and the mounting casualties on the ground. Sally Patterson has more.
Speaking in Washington, US Secretary of State Antony Blinken urged Israel to protect Palestinian civilians. According to the Hamas-run health ministry, more than 17,000 people have been killed since fighting began, following a surprise attack on Israel on October 7th. The White House says in a phone call with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, US President Joe Biden emphasized the critical need to protect civilians and to separate the civilian population from Hamas. An Israeli government spokesperson told reporters that Israel had put in place measures unprecedented in the history of warfare to keep civilians safe.
An Indian politician and opposition leader, also known to be a fierce critic of Prime Minister Narendra Modi and his party, was expelled from India's lower house of the parliament on Friday. The action comes after she was embroiled in a controversy over a bribery charge from October. Shurashi Mukherjee reports from New Delhi.
Mahua Moitra, member of the opposition party Trinamool Congress, was accused of asking questions in the parliament in exchange for money. She appeared before an ethics committee that started hearing this case from late October. The committee in its report declared that it found her actions to be highly objectionable, unethical, heinous and criminal. According to Indian law, a member of parliament can be expelled if the House votes in favour of the committee's report. Ms. Moitra's party strongly argued to allow her to defend herself, but the resolution was put to vote without allowing her to speak. She was expelled by a voice vote in the lower house of the Indian Parliament, and many members of opposition parties walked out as the vote was being conducted in protest. Shruti Mukherjee, New Delhi.
UK's Prime Minister Rishi Sunak is trying to convince Conservative MPs to back new legislation on the government's Rwanda migration plan. The new bill is meant to resurrect the government's flagship policy of sending asylum seekers to Rwanda. The Financial Times political editor George Parker says it's a major challenge for Sunak.
The problem for Rishi Sunak is that I think he's sort of fated to try to get this policy through because it's become such a totemic issue for the Conservatives. So he is going to persevere. There'll be the vote next week in the House of Commons on this new legislation. The problem is it's a massive advertisement for the fact that the government hasn't got a grip on illegal migration. And the longer this saga drags on, the more I suspect the public will just roll their eyes and basically say, we'll believe it.
You can help spread the ideas of liberty with our Patreon for just $5 per month at amps.freetalklive.com.
Welcome back to Free Talk Live. Talk radio that you can take control of. The telephone number is 603-283-6160. In the studio tonight, it's myself, Captain Kickass, joining me.
And Richie Rich. And Clockless Mountaineer.
Filling in for Peakless Mountaineer tonight is Clockless Mountaineer.
He's just a stick in the mud, that's why.
He's
no longer a stick in the mud, but he was a stick in the mud.
We're giving him crap, of course, but he's
well deserved.
He's not going to be joining us this evening, so we have found out he is okay. So that's the important part. We we'll see him return next week. Unless, of course, he pulls a hamstring or something, right? Ends up on IR.
Pulls a hammy. Stubs a toe.
Toeless mountaineer.
I tripped on my way out the door. That's why I'm 15 minutes late, Captain.
I mean, it's happened to me, too. Like, I remember getting ready to come to the show, and, I'm leaving early, right? Because I like to get here, a good half hour before the show starts. I got prep stuff to do in the first chair before the show starts or whatever. It doesn't take me a half hour, but, like, sometimes we get to chatting or something goes wrong and I need time to figure it out, whatever. But I got in my car and just nothing. Just nothing. I'm like, crap. And Ian was still here at the time, and so I had to make the call. I'm like, dude, I'm sorry. It's happened to me.
I just freshened my battery yesterday or the day before.
Yeah. It turned out, in my case, it wasn't the battery. It wasn't the starter. It was something called a relay.
Oh, okay.
It's just a little square-looking thing with some plugs on the end of it. And it was like a $12 part or something.
Okay.
And, yeah. So, but, had to get it towed somewhere to find that out.
That sort of happened to me once in an old car that was not drive-by-wire, right? I got into a fight with the chick. I left in haste, and I smashed the accelerator, and then it just wouldn't go anywhere. Just pedal right to the floor, just done.
Wow.
So we had it, then I had to make the call like, yes, we're still fighting, but you got to take me home now.
Because my car broke.
We're still going to fight later. This is not the end of the fight. We're going to fight, but you're going to take me home first. So we get the car like towed to my mom's house, and my mom has like a mechanic friend. So he pops the hood, and he finds the pedal cable, and he just hooks it back on the accelerator, and that was it. Like, bink, like right there, and all of a sudden it had tension again.
Wow.
Because it was not computer driven.
I had this happen. I got a set of these custom mats. I'm not going to name the brand, but you know the brand that you order online for your car on the floor.
I don't know the brand.
Oh, there's a brand, like if you go online, you plug in the year and make and model of your car, it'll send you the ones that are exactly designed to custom fit.
Okay.
Your car, right?
Does it have like a weird name that you just don't want to advertise?
I don't want to advertise.
Okay. All right.
So at any rate, I order some of these, and I'm driving along, and a hill comes up, and the car's it bogs down a little bit when you're going up the steep hills. So I step on the gas, and then when I get to the top of the hill, normally you let off the gas like a little before the top to make the car slow back down or whatever.
Yeah.
So I do that, except like the accelerator doesn't come back. Like the way the mat was, it like the accelerator got stuck by the edge of the mat itself. And so I ended up having to like reach down and like pull back on the mat to get the accelerator to unstick, because I was like, what the hell's going on? And like all of a sudden, like it was just gonna go faster and faster. I'm riding the brake with my other foot while I'm like reaching out, and it's kind of a hard reach, and but I got out of it.
All right. Well played.
At any rate, let's go to some of your calls and thoughts. We have Tim calling from Florida. Tim, you're on Free Talk Live.
Hey guys, I've been listening since at least about 2010, but I'm sure it was long before that. But I've been trying to remember for a long time when I started listening to Free Talk Live. I can't remember, but you were talking about how at one time it was Mark and Ian 6 nights a week.
Yeah,
I think you mentioned that, Richie Rich.
I did, because it was. Yeah.
I think at one point it was Mark and Ian 7 nights a week, I think.
Well, they added the Sunday show later.
Okay.
And then it got overwhelmed. I might be projecting, but it got overwhelming. And that's when the Sunday crew became the rotating cast of people working their way into the program.
Does that make sense?
Was there a question or just a thought there, Tim?
No, I was just thinking out loud. Actually, I called about, I think it was a few weeks ago. You mentioned, Captain, the UK television license for radio-based televisions. And I have always imagined that if the federal government were going to crack down on cryptocurrency, like peer-to-peer cryptocurrency, the way they could actually do it. And I know people say, oh, don't give them ideas, but they've already had the ideas, okay? and sometimes it's better to rip the Band-Aid off so a defense can be formed. They basically have to institute something like, a cryptocurrency mining license, and just like, they would track a marijuana grower, a grow house, by the electricity usage and the water consumption, and they would do the same thing, and they would stake out, cryptocurrency miners that didn't have the proper license, and they could do the same thing for computer use, just like you mentioned a couple of weeks ago.
That might be difficult within the United States just because a lot of the mining happens overseas. But those countries could absolutely do it, and then it would move elsewhere as well.
And then, there are people who are mining crypto not using an electric company, right? So they're mining it with a generator, they're mining it with solar, they're mining it with wind, or some combination of those, with even hydropower, right? There's people who have, a river running through their property, stick a wheel in the river, it turns a thing that makes some electricity, and, they turn that into crypto. So, those aren't the major ways it's done. Obviously, the major ways it's done is some of these larger companies have these crypto farms where they've got hundreds or thousands of crypto mining rigs, all, very neatly. It looks like a warehouse full of like crypto rigs, if you've ever seen one. And so, to your point, there's a lot of things that they could do. I think that one's a little outside of their scope.
Well, and it would revert it back. It would revert it back to more decentralization as well, right? Like when I was so early on Bitcoin, and didn't take advantage, and my introduction to Bitcoin was like through technology. But do you remember the old SETI at home program?
Yes.
Like
the search for extraterrestrial intelligence. We're going to use
your computer cycles to search for extraterrestrials.
Yep.
So I had that running on an old computer a long, long time ago. I had some protein folding thing running on a PS3 when that was a thing.
Yep.
And around that time, I heard about Bitcoin. And I went, oh, something similar. You just use my processing cycles and, I get coin, whatever. Right. But I had a netbook at the time.
Okay.
So I ran it, the protein folding on my, my PS3, I could fire that up and see I folded 1,000 proteins today or whatever.
Yeah.
Right. Well, I ran the original Bitcoin protocol on a netbook for 2 weeks and didn't generate anything.
Right.
And so I turned it off and gave up for, a few years. And I'm like, oh, this Bitcoin thing is really taking off. I might, should probably get into it. My point being is if they disrupt the mining industry with the warehouse full of crypto miners to maximize your hash rate, I think you'll just see more individuals getting back into it because they now have a shot, right? I think just this week there was an article posted an individual miner got a payout in Bitcoin. Because
he mined the one block.
Block.
Yeah.
But it's such a rarity because of all these warehouse fulls of miners. But if they crack down on the warehouse, it'll just go back to the individuals.
Tim?
Hey, a couple other thoughts, if I may.
Sure.
Most importantly, what happened to nobody? I thought that, well, first of all, before you answer that question, I've been wanting to say this for a while. I'm not going to say that I love every single night. That's all I'm going to say about that. But you, Captain, Richie Rich, Peakless, Nobody, who I miss hearing Nobody so much, and Steve Classic, you guys, you make the show. And I used to listen to Mark and Ian argue, and I used to love that stuff. And eventually I outgrew it. And I stopped listening for a long time.
Yeah.
And then when I came back, I heard you guys, and I'm like, oh, this is a great show. And Beard Talk Live, I wish every night was Beard Talk Live, even if it wasn't the cussing.
Oh, thanks, man. Somebody, there was something that occurred that I'm not at liberty to say on the radio. Something happened, and it was decided that nobody wasn't going to be on either show at this studio. So okay. That's all I can say about that. I
miss him, man. I miss hearing
I have seen him a couple of times. I haven't seen him recently, but
He didn't violate any protocol.
No.
For the show itself.
Yeah, it's hard to. I can't really tell you without telling you, right? But
no, it's okay. It's fine. It's
a
fine.
decision
It's
was
fine.
made that's above my, we'll call it my pay grade or whatever. And so, but I encourage him to do media. If that's something he wants to do, I just imagine him with a laptop and a microphone in front of his face, going on one of his famous rants, and just call that, nobody tells the truth.
Well, he was remote for a little while too, wasn't he? You guys set up some protocol where he could still host from home.
Yeah. And then Beard Talk Live is on a hiatus. There's some things that, and that's my decision. I put Beard Talk Live on hiatus because there's some changes that I want to make. I actually acquired the website beardtalklive.com, so I'm working on that. I want to bring it back at some point, but it's probably not going to be anytime soon. Look for it sometime next year. Hopefully,
you better
we can
hurry
bring
up,
that
or
back.
I'm going to shave this thing. I'm not waiting around forever.
I mean, just Free Talk Live with the same people.
Oh yeah.
Even if it's not exactly the same show. I mean, to me, it's the people that are important. So when it's like the two of you and Peakless, that's what I really like more than any other night of the week.
Thanks, man. We appreciate you listening.
Because controversy creates cash. We just sat around agreeing with each other.
Well,
want to be as fun of a show.
To me, Free Talk Live it's a unicorn, man. Not only is it a unicorn, but it's a canary in the coal mine.
Yep.
And so if Free Talk Live goes off the air for any reason other than Mark and Ian decided to pull the plug, right? We're getting old, or we've done it, that kind of a thing. If it goes off the air for any other reason, well, that's an indicator to you as to the state of, the police state, right? Because the only way we're going to go off the air is kicking and screaming, or Mark and Ian are like, okay, we're done.
And just know they've already raided the studio twice, and we're still here.
Yeah, but
and even if Mark and Ian call it quits, right? Because at least Ian is not, big on intellectual property. It may not be live on the air, but we could carry on the brand and just keep that thing going without any permission at all.
Yep, strike me down. I'll become strong. Like with what was that SEC issue with the library?
I've been using the phrase or the words or letters, I guess, FCC, in substitute for cussing. So, Tim, you're a mother FCCer, for example. Not that I think you are, but
be nice to the callers. That's what the show's built.
Hey, one other thought. A few weeks ago, I've been catching up on the shows, but someone referred to Nashua as the waste bucket of New Hampshire, and I thought the idea of basically ceding the town of Nashua to Massachusetts was pretty interesting. And also, there's a paradigm in history for it. You look at the Sudetenland in the Czech Republic, which is also the place that Dave Ridley was calling about. But in modern times, they called it something else, Lieberland, in the Donetsk region of Ukraine that had primarily Russians. It's the same kind of idea. I mean, ultimately, it should be down to the individual level. People should be able to decide.
Yeah. I want to know who said that about Nashua.
Oh, I'm trying to remember.
Was it Nikki? It might have been Nikki.
What was the rationale behind it?
Oh, it's just that Nashua is basically a Boston suburb.
Okay.
That, it's the Massachusetts people who are like,
right.
We have to get our house across the border to save on, not property tax, obviously, but, everything else.
All right. Well, because within the last couple of weeks, there was some articles like the nicest or the happiest, the friendliest city, in the country, and Nashua was on the list. So to be on a positive list for New Hampshire and then to be called the waste bucket was dichotomous to me. And let's leave Nashua there as a buffer, because if you cede it to Massachusetts, then those people will just move further north to get the same benefits.
So it would be the demilitarized zone.
Yeah, let's do that. And let's do it better. Let's put the demilitarized zone as part of Massachusetts, so New Hampshire doesn't cede any of that land either.
Ooh.
I like it.
Yeah, me too. Anything else, Tim?
You two have a good night.
Hey, thanks for your call, man. We appreciate you listening. 603-283-6160.
Nashua, with both friend and foe are welcome.
No, I actually, I mean, there has to be some, I guess I want to call it gray area between Massachusetts and New Hampshire at some point.
I just want it to be in Massachusetts.
Okay. Like, I don't really want, anything ceded or whatever. Like, I'd be just tickled if New Hampshire actually were to secede from the Union and become its own. I'd just be tickled pink.
Yeah.
Now,
then we'd have to put up a wall between Nashua and Massachusetts to keep those foreigners from invading.
I don't think
taking up all of our jobs.
I don't think any of that would happen.
No, okay.
Yeah, and in fact, I think that
Massachusetts are hardworking people.
The people inside of New Hampshire would suddenly have an economic advantage that no other state has, which is the ability to trade freely. Like, do you remember, I don't know, 15 years ago or something, in the news was always like, the free trade agreement, the free trade agreement, blah, 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 free trade. Here's what a free trade agreement should say. You are free to trade with anyone you want, whenever you want.
You shouldn't even have to write it down. It's the default state.
Yeah, that's all it should say. If it has to say anything at all, yeah.
Sure. Much like the Bill of Rights, right? It would be enshrined as opposed to created.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right, I'll take it.
Yes. But instead, no, the free trade agreement is, well, it's a bunch of stuff you can't do.
Okay. Is that one that Alex Jones got wrong?
I don't know.
Because it was like, it was the pitch for the Amero and the North Atlantic Highway that was going to go from Mexico to Canada.
Not about the Amero.
Yeah.
That one hurts my brain.
Okay.
Oh, man. Wow. That's pulling one out of the way back machine.
You're welcome.
Wow. Holy cow.
They're going to force this on us all. They're going to build a highway, 7 lanes both ways from Mexico all the way to Canada, and you're going to be forced to use the Amero.
I mean, you can already drive.
And they're turning the frogs gay.
You can already drive from, like, Alaska through Canada, like down the West Coast.
No, but it was going to be a whole brand new highway built.
All the way down. Like, I mean...
Yeah, there are routes that you can take to get from hither to yon, but this was going to be like a straight shot.
I've never been to yon.
You've never been to yon?
I've only been to hither.
You can Google Map going from here to there. That's also a thing. From heaven to hell as well, I think.
I'm trying to remember. I think in Wisconsin there is a town called Nowhere.
Okay.
So I've been to Nowhere.
Nice. You should take nobody to Nowhere and do nothing.
Probably exactly what would happen. So we were talking about, so we haven't even gotten into it. This from AP. Brazilian city enacts an ordinance that was secretly written by ChatGPT. Rio de Janeiro. City lawmakers in Brazil have enacted what appears to be the nation's first legislation written entirely by artificial intelligence, even if they didn't know it at the time.
That's the best part.
I know.
He just wrote it. It was like, I'm submitting this.
Dude goes like, hey, AI, can you just write a thing? Because, I'm too hungover. I got too drunk. I don't even know what the circumstances were, but like, whatever it is, right? And AI goes, okay, here. Spit something out. And he goes, great.
Based on your previous laws, this is what we think your next law will be.
The experimental ordinance was passed in October in the southern city of Porto Alegre, and City Councilman Ramiro Rosario revealed this week that it was written by a chatbot, sparking objections and raising questions about the role of artificial intelligence in public policy.
What's the prompt that he gave it?
I don't know, but
we need to usurp more tax money. Write me a law.
This particular paragraph is assuming that there is any intelligence at all in public policy. Probably one of the smartest things ever written. I mean, I don't know. I haven't read it.
Or in AI. There's, it's the term used more prominently is the large language model.
Yes.
Right. Like it doesn't understand it. It's predictive text.
Rosario told the Associated Press that he asked OpenAI's chatbot, ChatGPT, to craft a proposal to prevent the city from charging taxpayers to replace water consumption meters if they are stolen.
Oh.
So apparently they have a problem in Brazil with people stealing water meters.
Okay.
I guess. Again, to prevent the city from charging taxpayers to replace water consumption
He's
meters.
not even a good politician by their standards.
If they're stolen. He then presented it to his 35 peers on the council without making a single change or even letting them know about its unprecedented origin. That's
well played.
Just
trolling of the highest level. On behalf of the people for a change.
This is one of those good news stories, that I like to, it's not all bad news here. So,
he's still a politician.
Of course. And it's still legislation, which,
Right.
but quote, if I had revealed it before, the proposal certainly wouldn't have even been taken to a vote, Rosario told the AP by phone on Thursday. The 36-member council approved it unanimously, and the ordinance went into effect on November 23rd. So it's been in effect for a couple of weeks. It would appear to be unfair to the population to run the risk of the project not being approved simply because it was written by artificial intelligence, he added. The arrival of ChatGPT on the marketplace just over a year ago has sparked a global debate on the impacts of potentially revolutionary AI-powered chatbots.
How long was the text?
Oh, that's
our politicians don't read it, but sometimes it's like thousands of pages long. This seems like a page and a half might be sufficient.
What was the famous line here? You got to read it to know what's in it.
Oh, you gotta
you got to pass it to know what's in it.
Yeah.
We don't have to read it. We got to pass it first. Then we'll find out what's in it. I almost said a bad word there. Sorry, guys.
Well held back. FCC.
It was really FCCing tough.
Okay.
Is what it was. The arrival of ChatGPT on the marketplace over a year ago has sparked global debate. While some see it as a promising tool, it has also caused concerns and anxiety. Okay, anyway.
Well, there was that one lawyer that asked it to cite some legal precedent, and it made up some legal precedent for him, and he got his license suspended.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, so, I remember that.
You can't trust it. Like, it's a good starting point.
Some see it as a promising tool. It also has caused concerns and anxiety about the unintended or undesired impacts of a machine handling tasks currently performed by humans. Okay, I'm going to stop there. There's more to this article, but and we'll get into it. But when I was growing up, it was believed that by the time I was, my age now, that we'd have robots doing all the menial stuff.
You'd have a Rosie.
Yeah, we'd have a Rosie from the Jetsons, right? Robot house cleaner, right? And people are like, well, you have the Roomba. It's not the same thing.
Yeah.
And also, I don't have one.
I don't know if I'd want one.
I also don't know if I want one.
I can't even wipe down the countertops. Rosie could wipe down the counters.
What happened instead was people discovered that it was less expensive to outsource stuff to foreign countries because you could pay them a lot less.
Yep.
And so that's where all the industry and all the stuff started getting made, no longer in the U.S.
Get yourself a Mexican to clean the counters.
603-283-6160. Still to come, we'll talk more about this ChatGPT legislation and more. It's Free Talk Live, the Saturday night edition. 603-283-6160.
This hour of Free Talk Live is brought to you by Dash Digital Cash. Dash is the cryptocurrency designed to be used for spending. Tired of the ever-inflating U.S. dollar? You can live your life on Dash instead with some handy websites. BitRefill.com has been accepting Dash for years and has a ton of big-name retailers and brands including grocers, gas stations, phone refills, Amazon, and even prepaid MasterCards. Plus, many of their gift cards are available at a discount. But what about paying your bills? Spritz.finance can do that, and they can send dollars to your bank account in case you still need those for some reason. Dash is one of the oldest cryptocurrencies and is widely available on exchanges, including the decentralized Maya protocol, and in multi-crypto wallets. It's easy to get and use Dash. Start by learning more at Dash.org. Thanks to the Dash DAO for sending us 32 Dash per month to promote Dash on the air. Visit Dash.org to learn about Dash. Dash.org.
There are basically two types of advertising, direct response and branding. Radio's great for direct response with its low cost to listener ratio, but audio can't be beat for branding, which is a longer term endeavor. You want to be the first thing that someone thinks of when they think about your product or service. If you have a local business that you want kept top of mind in your community, call the station. If you need national reach, Free Talk Live's got around 200 radio stations, millions of monthly listening sessions, can suit all budgets, and if we don't think we're right for you, we'll tell you. Email me, mark@freetalklive.com.
Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. Chat.lrn.fm.
You're listening to the live edition of Free Talk Live. Hour number 3 is next after the news here on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.fm.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Caroline Malone with the Week in Review. Hostilities are making humanitarian efforts nearly impossible in Gaza, according to the United Nations. Their agencies are warning there needs to be a ceasefire or thousands more people will die. The United States isn't supporting a ceasefire, but it has issued some of its strongest criticism of Israel's conduct in the war in Gaza since fighting began. US Secretary of State Antony Blinken said there was a gap between the Israeli government's intent to protect civilians and the mounting casualties on the ground. Sally Patterson has more.
Speaking in Washington, US Secretary of State Antony Blinken urged Israel to protect Palestinian civilians. According to the Hamas-run health ministry, more than 17,000 people have been killed since fighting began, following a surprise attack on Israel on October 7th. The White House says in a phone call with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, US President Joe Biden emphasized the critical need to protect civilians and to separate the civilian population from Hamas. An Israeli government spokesperson told reporters that Israel had put in place measures unprecedented in the history of warfare to keep civilians safe. Sally Patterson, New York.
An Indian politician and opposition leader, also known to be a fierce critic of Prime Minister Narendra Modi and his party, was expelled from India's lower house of the parliament on Friday. The action comes after she was embroiled in a controversy over a bribery charge from October. Shurashi Mukherjee reports from New Delhi.
Mahua Moitra, member of the opposition party Trinamool Congress, was accused of asking questions in the parliament in exchange for money. She appeared before an ethics committee that started hearing this case from late October. The committee in its report declared that it found her actions to be highly objectionable, unethical, heinous and criminal. According to Indian law, a member of parliament can be expelled if the House votes in favour of the committee's report. Ms. Moitra's party strongly argued to allow her to defend herself, but the resolution was put to vote without allowing her to speak. She was expelled by a voice vote in the lower house of the Indian Parliament, and many members of opposition parties walked out as the vote was being conducted in protest. Shruti Mukherjee, New Delhi.
UK's Prime Minister Rishi Sunak is trying to convince Conservative MPs to back new legislation on the government's Rwanda migration plan. The new bill is meant to resurrect the government's flagship policy of sending asylum seekers to Rwanda, but it's angered many on the right of his party. The Financial Times political editor George Parker says it's a major challenge for Sunak.
The problem for Rishi Sunak is that I think he's sort of fated to try to get this policy through because it's become such a totemic issue for the Conservatives. So he is going to persevere. There'll be the vote next week in the House of Commons on this new legislation. The problem is it's a massive advertisement for the fact that the government hasn't got a grip on illegal migration. And the longer this saga drags on, the more I suspect the public will just roll their eyes and basically say, we'll believe it when we see it.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN. US President Biden's push to pass tens of billions of dollars in new aid for Ukraine has stalled in the Senate. Republican lawmakers blocked the funding, which also includes help for Israel. They want the funding to include additional border security and a focus on immigration, and refuse to fund Ukraine without it. Kate Fisher reports from Washington.
Republicans are insisting that any foreign aid must be accompanied by major changes to border security policy. President Biden's accused them of playing chicken with US national security. The White House has warned that funding for Ukraine will run out by the end of the year without congressional action.
A coral reef in the French Polynesian island of Tahiti has been damaged as a result of construction efforts for the 2024 Olympics. Tahiti is hosting the Olympics surfing competition, with the main summer games happening in France. But plans to build a large judges' tower for the event have been surrounded by controversy, and this latest development has meant the construction is paused. Simon Gaitan reports.
The International Surfing Association says it welcomes the French Polynesian government's decision to pause construction of a controversial judges' tower in Tahiti for the 2024 Olympic surfing. The announcement comes after a barge involved in the construction damaged the Teahupo coral reef. Groups in opposition to the construction of the judging tower released a video showing the barge propeller appearing to become stuck on the shallow reef, damaging the coral in the process. The ISA expressed sadness and surprise at the coral damage. However, local opponents of the construction warned of the risk posed by plans to build a large judges' tower in the reef. Simon Gaitan, Paris.
I'm Caroline Malone in Washington, and that was The Week in...
Jared Gilchrist was surfing when he was attacked by a shark that took his leg. Thanks for being with us, big guy.
Thanks, this is tight.
What was going through your mind when you first realized that you were there with a shark all alone in open water?
I felt like a total badass. It bit into my leg and started shaking it back and forth, and at that point I just felt, yes, this is sweet.
I can't imagine what it would have been like to see the teeth sinking into your leg like.
It was sick. At one point, I just saw my leg just floating there in the water. It was awesome.
Okay, we're joined now via satellite by Dr. Brian Caddy. What condition was Jared's leg in when you first saw him?
It was in pretty rough shape. The shark had scissored through the muscle, and it was all just like hanging off the bone. It was nuts.
Yeah, I kept touching it. It was slimy as hell.
Yeah, totally. It was insane.
Well, doctor, how do you deal with something like this?
Well, you're never fully prepared for an injury this freaking cool. We just tried to stop the blood loss, and we took a bunch of photos because it's hysterical to freak out the nurses with gnarly shit like this.
This is the Onion News Network.
Yep, we still do email. Drop your email address in the entry box at freetalklive.com, and you'll be kept in the loop with Free Talk Live. Free Talk Live.
Yes, welcome back to Free Talk Live. I don't know why I'm making that voice.
Terrible voice.
Yeah. But it is Free Talk Live.
It is.
The telephone number, if you'd like to join us, 603-283-6160. In the studio tonight, it's...
Richie Rich.
And?
The Captain.
And?
Clockless Mountaineer.
That's right. We're sans one host today, so we've replaced him with a chair and a clock and a speaker. And we've named him Clockless Mountaineer.
Which doesn't make sense because he's a clock.
Right, so he's not clockless.
Yeah, but whatever.
Probably not going to be doing any mountaineering anytime soon either.
We should post the picture of Clockless Mountaineer with the beard to like the Free Talk Live social media.
I can do that.
Okay.
Yep, I can make that happen. It'll be after the show. It won't
that's
be
fine.
now,
I don't care.
I can do that. But speaking of thanking people, you're like, wait, were we talking about that?
No, I saw you pick up the paper.
But I'm going to now.
Yeah.
I want to say thank you to somebody named Sean Paul. Now, normally I'd make a joke about don't trust a man with two first names. But in this case,
okay,
I'm giving him a pass because Sean Paul is a silver level amplifier. What does that mean? What does it mean to be a Free Talk Live amplifier? Well, Sean Paul has visited amps.freetalklive.com and voluntarily decided to give us $5 a month in order to help advertise, market, promote, and support. That's what AMPS stands for. Advertise, market, promote, and support. Where does that money go? Well, it goes directly into my beer fund. No, it doesn't. It goes to help get Free Talk Live on more radio stations. We're currently on about 180 radio stations. We could be on 200, 250, 300, not out of the question. It's all up to you. If you enjoy the hosts, the co-hosts, the callers, the perspective of peace, liberty, prosperity, and freedom that we bring, please consider becoming an amplifier and helping us spread the message of freedom over at amps.freetalklive.com. It's a Patreon type of setup, so there's different levels. You can give more than $5. We only ask for $5. but you can give more. There's different perks that you get for different levels of giving and that kind of stuff. But that's not why you should give. You should give because you want to help spread the message of freedom and you enjoy the show. So thank you to Sean Paul. We appreciate you.
Still the best use of your Liberty Dollar, and not the Liberty Dollar. But
yeah, God, I wish I had one of those. The
which
collector's
one?
item, the Von Nauhaus one.
Oh, I know that, but there was like the paper dollar. The warehouse receipt.
No, the coin.
Yeah, okay.
The silver dollar looking thing.
I've got one of those somewhere.
Do you?
Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't get in on that back in the day.
I've got a few. I bought like, I don't know how many I have, but I have kind of like the gift set.
Yeah.
Right. Like the different sizes and weights going down.
I recently, so once upon a time, I got a friend of mine interested in Bitcoin.
Okay.
Back before I even moved here, so at least 5 years ago, probably 8 years ago, 10 years ago, something like that. And he'd been talking about it. He didn't get into it. He didn't end up getting any or acquiring any. But because he'd been talking about it one year for Christmas, like his uncle gave him like $10 in Bitcoin. And this was in the...
and now he's a millionaire. Oh.
No, no.
Not that
this is
ago.
in one of these certificate-looking things. It's real official-looking.
Okay.
It's got a little pull tab thing that you got to pull to reveal the code, the QR, and all that stuff under it, and that kind of a thing. And he ended up giving it to me. Like, he regifted it.
Okay.
His uncle gave it to him because he'd been talking about it, and he's like, well, here, I got you something. And he knew that I was into it because I got him talking about it, and he was like, well, here, dude, it's Christmas. Here,
Nice.
let me give this to you.
Okay.
So time goes by. And I do the calculation. I'm like, all right, well, this $10 is now worth, I don't remember how much it was, $150, something like that. And so I went ahead and I gave my friend, we'll call him Chris, because I have so many friends named Chris. We call him Steve, too, because I got so many friends named Steve. But I gave my friend Chris back his $10, except with appreciation, right?
Okay.
So I gave him $150 in Bitcoin, right? And he was like, no way, dude. And I'm like, hell yeah, dude. And so he was super happy about getting, because I basically was like, a savings account for him at that point.
Okay.
And so I gave him 150, but I only gave it to him. I didn't give it to him from the certificate, right? You see, I just had some Bitcoin of my own, and I did the calculation. I'm like, hey, remember that $10 that you gave me on that certificate? He's like, yeah. I'm like, well, it's worth like 150. So what's your Bitcoin address? And he's like, oh, it's this. And I sent him 150.
Did you still have the certificate?
I still had the certificate.
Did you pull the tab?
Now, I did recently, but well after this occurred. The reason that I did it was because there is somewhere a spreadsheet or a database that has the keys. And so if I didn't pull the tab and move it into a wallet into my possession, there's a chance that somebody still has access to that database that originally spit these certificates out.
Okay.
You see, that has those keys. And so if I didn't move it and secure it, I was taking a risk.
All right.
I, however, kept the certificate.
Okay.
For nostalgia purposes.
I was going to suggest more that if you still had the certificate, that would be one of those every year you just re-gift it back to him. And the next year he gives it back to you. And then at some point, like one of you either like pulls it because you're in a pinch or whatever.
Yeah.
Or whoever outlasts the other guy gets it in the end.
I'm pretty sure it was a result of like whenever I bought my house, it was a result of me like moving and like going through all of my stuff during the move. And I was like, oh yeah. Right. And I kind of remembered that. And then I did the calc and I'm like, you know what? I'm going to give it back to him.
Yeah.
Right. Hey, dude, you gave this to me as a gift, but I'm going to gift it back. He's like, yeah. So I thought it was cool. He thought it was cool too. But then I was reading up on it and like, yeah, there's more than one person that has that information.
Okay.
Right. And the fact that it exists somewhere means that somebody has access to it.
Yeah.
And so I was like, I think I'll just secure it now. And
I mean, there were the Casasius coins too.
I didn't get one of those either. Yeah. I wasn't here.
Those were the early stages of trying to like wedge Bitcoin back into the current monetary system.
Yeah.
We need to have paper and coinage.
Yep. I mean, and all great ideas. Unnecessary, but now, at least. So at any rate, what have we been talking about, Richie Rich? We've been talking about all sorts of stuff.
Well, the AI-generated law in Brazil.
That's right.
Where we left off.
So, yeah, ChatGPT has apparently written some legislation. What did they say? An ordinance in Brazil
to protect the people, though.
This guy Ramiro Rosario didn't tell anybody. Like, he had ChatGPT concoct something to prevent the city from charging taxpayers to replace their water meters if the water meters get stolen. Apparently, there's something valuable in these meters that gets them stolen. I assume some precious metal or some component that nets money. But he didn't tell anybody, and then the thing passed, and it went into effect on November 23rd.
What does this suggest about ChatGPT, though? Right, that it can put together a well-articulated paragraph of information.
That's a good.
What are we reading into this? It fooled politicians, okay, but if he prompted it to write, a bill with this parameters, and it did, okay, so what? That's what it does. It takes your parameters and it crafts words.
I think the thing that would make most people perk up is like, are the robots going to start making laws?
Well, they would have to be autonomous on their own, right? He fed a prompt with a very specific goal in mind, and it formulated the words to articulate for him
so well that nobody noticed. Apparently, or like most politicians, they just didn't read it. They're like, "Sure, we'll pass that. It's fine. Oh, it looks formatted right."
Well, and again, that's why I asked how long it was, because it may have just been a paragraph or two on a page, and then who cares, right?
Yeah. The article continues. Porto Alegre, with a population of 1.3 million, is the second largest city in Brazil's south. The city council president, Hamilton Saucemeyer.
That's a name.
It'd be better if it was Saucemeister, and he was a drunk.
Okay.
Like, you gotta sort of fulfill your
or
destiny.
Premier Chef.
Oh, yeah. It's spelled Sossmeier.
Okay.
So it's, Anyway, Hamilton Saucemeyer found out that Rosario had enlisted ChatGPT to write the proposal when the councilman bragged about the achievement on social media on Wednesday.
What if it's a hoax?
The story is so good.
Even if he'll come out next week and be like, "No, I wrote it. I was just fooling y'all."
Saucemeyer initially told local media that he thought it was a dangerous precedent.
All right.
Hey, guess what? A language model can write better legislation than you politicians.
Well, that might not even be true, right? It's just it follows the prompt. It's articulate.
The AI large language models that power chatbots like ChatGPT work by repeatedly trying to guess the next word in a sentence and are prone to making up false information.
See?
Just like people.
Well, which is why you got to read it. But if you're passing if you're doing a history report, right, you may not want to rely on ChatGPT.
Yeah.
But if you're doing a creative endeavor, and this is the starting point, and you can go, if you're doing fiction.
That's an interesting point, because usually, at least it's been my experience thus far, that a new technology arrives and the first place it gets utilized is art.
Yeah.
Right. So like audio, right? Oh, software is changing the recording industry, right? And it has, 30 times or something since I've been alive, right? New technology comes out, I can't tell you how many format changes I've been through as a person.
Or actual art, right? I forget what the prominent one that just creates images is.
Right. Yeah. So this phenomenon of making up false information is called hallucination, believe it or not.
All right.
So ChatGPT, when it makes up fake stuff, is called hallucination. All chatbots sometimes introduce false information when summarizing a document. It says all and then sometimes. That's a really well-written sentence. Ranging from about 3% of the time for the most advanced GPT model to a rate of about 27% for one of Google's models, according to recently published research by the tech company Vectara. In an article published on the website of Harvard Law School's Center of Legal Profession earlier this year, Andrew Perlman, dean at Suffolk University Law School, wrote that ChatGPT may portend an even more momentous shift than the advent of the internet, but also warned of its potential shortcomings.
So we don't have to get into it, nor am I suggesting we switch, but I did have this headline as part of show prep. Psychologists find sleep can distort our memories. right?
I have that in show prep. Yeah.
I know, I get it, but I'm not saying we have to get into it. I'm just saying I want to relate it to the Chat GPT, right?
Okay.
Creating these hallucinations when humans are just as prone to the same sort of error.
Yeah.
Right. With false memories.
Yeah. And these false memories go back, like research on that. I mean, I remember reading stuff about that as a kid where 10 people were involved in a Cessna went down, crashed somewhere. And then when people were interviewed about that after they got to safety or whatever, they all recalled it differently.
Yeah.
Right. They almost none of them, their stories jived. They all had different memories of what happened and what sequence and who did what and who didn't do stuff and all that kind of stuff. So
they warn you about that if you're ever in an armed conflict with the firearm, right? Your body goes to physiological changes and your temporal perception shifts, and you don't know how things happened and in what order.
Yeah.
It just goes out the window.
It happened to me the first time I ever stepped on stage with an electric guitar and a band.
Okay.
Time just slowed down. We're playing speed metal. Right?
Okay.
Ripping. And it felt like we were playing everything at half speed.
You were in the zone.
I was young at the time, and me and the other guitar player, we used to do this bit during the opening song where we'd pogo.
Okay.
And that's just jumping up and down while you're playing, right?
Okay.
But just using basically your ankles, not
Got it.
Kind of a thing.
Wasn't sure what it was.
Yeah. And so we're doing the pogo at the pogo part of the song, and we kind of almost pogo into each other, but we see that that's about what we're about to do. And so we sort of, lean back the other way, but both of us simultaneously, as a result of trying to avoid the collision, fall down.
Nice.
With our guitars. And I thought, oh no, we've ruined the show, right? And I'm kind of still hitting strings and stuff, and so is he. Because I'm on the ground, I'm kind of half on my side, half on my back, and so is he. And so I kind of get up on one leg, and then I kind of get up on another leg, and I finally stand up. We keep playing. I'm like, oh man, we've totally ruined the show. And we keep playing. We finally end the song or whatever. We continue with our set, and we get done. We took video of that. And I think the next time we had rehearsal, which is probably the next day, or at least unloading the van, we
got to practice this now.
We put the video in, and I'm still like, no, we totally botched that opening song. Watch the video. It took a second. It was pogo, 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 fall down, get up.
Nice.
Right? Bam. And almost the drummer kept going, singer kept going, we kept going. So no one even noticed.
Nice.
Except us. Right?
Because you're in the moment.
Time had just slowed down, that temporal
distortion.
Illusion. Yeah, that distortion where we're playing, arguably a 3-minute song that felt like it took a half an hour. So
I will say this, when I got hit by a car, my life did not flash before my eyes and nothing slowed down. I did not experience any of that. I just woke up later.
I was in a van. My brother was driving. The road turned to ice. There was a coating of snow on the road. There was no salt down. This is in Wisconsin. I was 19 or so years old. And this tandem semi jackknifes in front of us. And we end up crashing the front of the van into the back corner of this tandem semi.
Okay.
And I wasn't wearing my seatbelt. Neither was my brother. I thought I was going to die. And so I braced my hand up against the dashboard. Right. And I was like, I'm going to keep my eyes open as long as I can, because if I'm going to die, I want to see how I die.
And feel your arms snap.
Right. And so the crash happens. I have this blank, right? Here comes the semi. I don't have any memory. I don't have any, usually my memories, I can hear stuff because I'm an auditory guy. I have no memory of the crash itself, other than next thing I know, I'm in between both of the seats. In between the van seats on the floor.
Okay.
And I hit my back on the driver's seat. My brother's still in the driver's seat. He's holding the steering wheel in his hand, but the steering wheel is now detached.
Okay.
From it's in his lap.
Yeah.
We're both covered in glass, right? And I'm worried about, because it was kind of a busy highway, I'm worried about people ramming into us. Yeah. So I'm trying to drag my brother out, and so we get out and all that kind of stuff, and we ended up, we're okay. My back, that's how I originally screwed up my back.
Okay.
But went to the hospital. They're like, your x-ray is good and whatever. But it hasn't been the same since then.
Yep.
But I wanted to see. I was like, well, if this is how I go. but that's how it went.
Yep. Nope. I saw the headlights, I heard the smash, and then I woke up. That's it.
Wow.
No flash, no it's not like the headlights got real slow as it came. There was just nothing.
Yeah. Every now and again I get behind a semi and I'm like, should I turn off and, should I pass this guy? I just don't like, when it's winter. I just don't like, now I'm a little
you gotta get
paranoid of the semis, especially the tandem ones. This is, for those who don't know, it's a semi truck with 2 of the trailers attached to it. Not just one, not a normal semi truck with like the cab and then one cargo trailer.
Yep.
This is a cab with one cargo trailer and then another one attached to that. So, pretty dangerous.
I try to get ahead because if they're going to wreck, I want them to wreck behind me and impede everybody else.
Let's see. We've got someone calling. Unscreened caller. What's your name, please?
Hi, this is Kurt from Michigan.
Hey, Kurt, you're on Free Talk Live. What is on your mind?
Well, I would like to talk about base liberty tenants. Go down to Libertarianism 101 if we can.
Okay.
I know we get new listeners all the time, and I think that this is something worth covering.
Okay. What are base libertarian tenants?
Well, base liberty tenants would be those tenants outside of which, when you step, you are stepping away from liberty.
Is this more than just the non-aggression principle?
Well, it kind of, obviously, it all intertwines, right?
Okay.
Like, I guess the first thing we'd have to agree on what the base liberty tenants are, right? Because liberty is an agreement, right?
Well, you just defined it. Those things that which you step out, you are stepping out of liberty.
That's defining what. But yes, well, let's say, for instance, I believe that self-ownership is a base liberty tenant.
Okay.
Right. So each right-bearing entity owns themselves, and as a result of which they own their skills, their time, their abilities, and their talents, and own everything that they trade for that. And anybody that steps in between that without the permission of the participants is committing an aggression against liberty. Would you consider that a base liberty tenant?
I would, Richie.
I'll accept it for now, but so go on.
Okay.
Would you believe or consider consent to be a base libertarian tenant?
Yes.
Richie?
Basically, that kind of spells it out.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. A second base liberty tenant that I would think would be there are no gradient rights, right? Like everybody has the same level of rights. Now we may not have rights in the exact same thing. Like I may have rights to this property that you don't have, but we all possess the right to acquire property justly.
Okay.
What would be a gradient right? Is there an example of one that you can give to our audience?
Sure. The way we used to treat African Americans.
Or that cops can speed to catch up to you.
You can't own property. You can't, participate in the process.
Okay.
These types of things.
Okay.
So
exclusionary rights.
Correct.
Okay.
I will disagree on that premise only because this is where it would be nice to have Peakless here instead of Clockless sitting in his chair. My personal philosophy or opinion is that rights don't exist. They're, for lack of a better term, a social construct and a fiction.
Well, as is language and mathematics, right? But those help move society forward, as do rights.
Talking about rights is conceptually useful, but I don't believe that anyone has quote unquote rights.
Interesting.
Only to from what I've heard, only to the ability for themselves to defend them. Correct?
Yeah. Like if you can't defend it, you don't have a right.
A person in a wheelchair has no rights in your estimation.
I don't think anybody really has rights in my estimation. That's why I consider it a fiction.
Okay.
Right. You can shout from the rooftops that I have a right to life until someone shoots you in the head.
Well, that doesn't necessarily mean that you don't have the right to life. It was just aggressed against.
Yeah, which is a great fiction.
Hey, I feel like you have more to say. Do you want to hang on?
Please.
All right, stand by. We'll bring you back after the after this. 603-283-6160. It's Free Talk Live. We'll talk more about base libertarian tenets and acts of fiction in the human mind. It's Free Talk Live.
On Free Talk Live, we're bringing people to the ideas of liberty every day. From wrestling superstars like Glenn Jacobs.
You guys really are having an impact, I believe. Like I said, a lot of where I am now is due to listening to Free Talk Live. You changed my mind on some very important issues years ago.
To random people tuning in on the radio.
I was kind of stuck in the left-right paradigm. I heard your show by chance on a Saturday night. From there, I went on, joined the Free State Project, and become an amplifier. So, I mean, that's really the reason why I amp is because I know that if it wasn't for you guys being on as many stations as you are, I never would have found the ideas of liberty.
You can help more people hear the message of liberty by joining Free Talk Live's AMPS program on Patreon for as little as $5 a month. And you'll get access to special perks. Visit amps.freetalklive.com, amps.freetalklive.com.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Caroline Malone with the Week in Review. Hostilities are making humanitarian efforts nearly impossible in Gaza, according to the United Nations. Their agencies are warning there needs to be a ceasefire or thousands more people will die. The United States isn't supporting a ceasefire, but it has issued some of its strongest criticism of Israel's conduct in the war in Gaza since fighting began. US Secretary of State Antony Blinken said there was a gap between the Israeli government's intent to protect civilians and the mounting casualties on the ground. Sally Patterson has more.
Speaking in Washington, US Secretary of State Antony Blinken urged Israel to protect Palestinian civilians. According to the Hamas-run health ministry, more than 17,000 people have been killed since fighting began, following a surprise attack on Israel on October 7th. The White House says in a phone call with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, US President Joe Biden emphasized the critical need to protect civilians and to separate the civilian population from Hamas. An Israeli government spokesperson told reporters that Israel had put in place measures unprecedented in the history of warfare to keep civilians safe.
An Indian politician and opposition leader, also known to be a fierce critic of Prime Minister Narendra Modi and his party, was expelled from India's lower house of the parliament on Friday. The action comes after she was embroiled in a controversy over a bribery charge from October. Shurashi Mukherjee reports from New Delhi.
Mahua Moitra, member of the opposition party Trinamool Congress, was accused of asking questions in the parliament in exchange for money. She appeared before an ethics committee that started hearing this case from late October. The committee in its report declared that it found her actions to be highly objectionable, unethical, heinous and criminal. According to Indian law, a member of parliament can be expelled if the House votes in favour of the committee's report. Ms. Moitra's party strongly argued to allow her to defend herself, but the resolution was put to vote without allowing her to speak. She was expelled by a voice vote in the lower house of the Indian Parliament, and many members of opposition parties walked out as the vote was being conducted in protest. Shruti Mukherjee, New Delhi.
UK's Prime Minister Rishi Sunak is trying to convince Conservative MPs to back new legislation on the government's Rwanda migration plan. The new bill is meant to resurrect the government's flagship policy of sending asylum seekers to Rwanda. The Financial Times political editor George Parker says it's a major challenge for Sunak.
The problem for Rishi Sunak is that I think he's sort of fated to try to get this policy through because it's become such a totemic issue for the Conservatives. So he is going to persevere. There'll be the vote next week in the House of Commons on this new legislation. The problem is it's a massive advertisement for the fact that the government hasn't got a grip on illegal migration. And the longer this saga drags on, the more I suspect the public will just roll their eyes and basically say, well, believe it.
Got Telegram? You can follow our channel there and discuss show prep with other listeners at telegram.freetalklive.com.
Yes, it is Free Talk Live. It's the final segment of the Saturday night edition. Might still be time for you if you want to call 603-283-6160. In the studio tonight, it's myself, the captain.
And Richie Rich.
And
Clockless Mountaineer.
Yeah, Clockless Mountaineer over there. He hasn't really said much tonight, but...
it just keeps ticking away.
Well, dang, he looks good.
Yeah.
What were we doing? Oh, we were talking to... oh, my gosh. Caller, I've forgotten your name. What is it?
Kurt.
Kurt, thank you. We were talking to Kurt about rights and human constructs and that type of a thing. Rich, pick up.
I reject that we have rights. I acknowledge that they are useful in discussing certain topics. So the fundamental rights that people discuss is life, liberty, and property. But we know that those can be aggressed against, attenuated, or what have you. So you don't have a right to life. You have a life if you can defend it.
Or right? For as long as you do.
For as long as you defend it. Right? You don't have liberty. You don't have a right to liberty. You have liberty as long as you can defend it for as long as you can defend it.
Or as long as you exercise it.
Sure. You don't have a right to property. You have property so long as you can defend it against any and all aggressors.
So, Kurt, what do you got to say?
Well, that would be, the reality of this situation, given that, might does make right in our world.
Yeah, it does.
In a society where liberty is respected, because again, we have a whole host of abstracts that come together to make humanity greater than itself, mathematics, science, medicine. These are all things that are just ideas in people's heads.
Yeah.
Right. But there's no doubt that they move society forward, and we find that those societies that respect rights end up being far more prosperous. And therefore, I think that it's worth respecting these rights in order to raise the prosperity of people,
right?
Humanity.
And not just the rights, but if you respect other people's life, if you respect other people's liberty, and you respect other people's property, then there's no need for them to defend it against you.
Correct.
Okay. But you don't have a right.
But there always will be. I mean, the fact of the matter is even without the mass crime that government creates and commits, there would still be crime. The question is to whom does the retribution belong?
Be more specific.
In our society, it belongs to the government, right?
Okay.
I believe it belongs to the victim, but our society, the government takes ownership of that retribution.
Sure.
Yeah, they claim a monopoly on, the court system, all that kind of stuff.
They have a right to violence.
So I've got a third liberty tenet, if you don't mind me putting it out there.
Sure.
No right-bearing entity can stay within the confines of liberty while extracting their daily, resources from somebody that is not consenting to it.
So violation of consent.
But yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I'm on board.
Okay. So I believe that every once in a while, Free Talk Live posits a position that I think does not reflect these base liberty tenets. The one in particular I'd like to bring up is the River Dave situation.
Okay.
And I don't know if you want to recap that. I guess he was living on somebody else's property with permission.
Yep.
The property changed hands.
Yep.
And the new property owner no longer wanted him there.
Okay.
And he had every right to ask him to leave. And I think that the person, not that Free Talk Live denigrated the property owner, but they certainly exalted the person who was extracting their resources from somebody without their permission.
Go on. Be more concrete with your examples, because I'm having trouble following the abstract.
Well, so the situation with
River Dave lived on somebody else's property, and
we got
had
that
a shack
part
built there. And as a result of that, this person was going to incur higher bills through taxation.
Okay.
And not only that, but they had this thing that they may or may not want, this structure on their property they may or may not want.
Okay.
My understanding of that situation, and I could be wrong, is that everything you've said, is correct, with the exception that there was no knowledge of River Dave passed on when the ownership changed hands. So River Dave got permission from owner A, right? We'll call him Bob, right? Yep. Bob was like, sure, River Dave, you can have a shack on my land. It's totally cool. As long as you're just chilling. And he was like, sure, no problem. And then Bob sold the property to property owner number 2.
It was actually inherited. I understand Bob died and it was inherited, right?
Okay, all right. So Bob Jr.
By his brother.
Bob Jr. or Bob's brother now owns the land, so ownership changes, but there was no mention of River Dave in the ownership change of hands, is my understanding.
Mention of River Dave or mention to River Dave or both?
Both.
Okay.
Yeah, so like, Bob dies and, the...
Steve comes along and says, hey, get off my land.
Well, Steve gets the land, has no knowledge that River Dave was given permission to be there by the previous owner, and River Dave has no knowledge that the ownership has changed.
Okay.
And so now we have this, this situation that's Curtis now talking to us about.
Okay. And your position with regards to Free Talk Live is we picked the wrong side in that dispute.
I didn't hear anybody say that the new owner had every right to ask him to leave, and River Dave should have immediately left.
Well, immediately is a strong term, right?
Well, I mean, to the extent that you can gather your things reasonably and vacate the property, or at least tell them, indicate your intention to do so.
Yeah, can I say the D word on the air?
Well, let's use Richard.
Okay.
I mean, I think you can, but let's be careful.
So there's I think this comes from Stefan Molyneux, and it was generally, don't be a Richard.
Yeah.
Right? So if you're the new property owner and you come across River Dave, don't be a Richard.
Right.
Right? Talk to him, see what the situation is. What would the community, how would the community view your actions if you were, if you roughed up River Dave? It's like the ANCAP scenario of like, if the little girl picks a daisy on your lawn, can you shoot her? Do you have the right to shoot her? Are you allowed to shoot her?
Yeah.
Well, just don't do it.
Right.
Don't be a Richard.
Well, there again, there's an increasing level of action against a person. Obviously, the first thing is not to pull out a gun, right? If somebody is trampling your property or has done damage, you send them a letter or you speak to them.
Sure.
You've done this damage. You need to make me whole. You don't shoot the girl in the head as she's picking your daisies, right?
Right. So with River Dave, what damage was River Dave doing to the property that caused this? Caused Steve in our example.
It was a government-induced problem, right? The government talked to the new owner and said, hey, you got this person here, you got an additional structure there, your taxes are going to go up this much, or we're going to have to send someone out to inspect it, whatever. But he was getting heat from the local government.
All right, so put the blame on the government then.
Well, the blame is on the government, but the fact of the matter is that, I mean, ultimately, the blame for everything is on the government, if you ask me. But
well, there you go.
The red thread runs through all our problems.
These two people could have peacefully coexisted.
But he still the right to ask him to leave.
These two people could have peacefully coexisted, never being aware of each other until River Dave peacefully passed on because he was elderly to begin with, right? Except for the fact that the state came in and caused conflict between two otherwise peaceful individuals.
Well, so again, if just because I don't know that you're extracting your resources from my property does not mean you're not in violation of my property rights. Just because you can get away with it, and I don't know.
Well, but he wasn't getting away with it. He was operating under a previous agreement that he had there was no knowledge was null and void.
That died with the old owner, right? But as long as I don't know what the first meeting between them was like, but the new owner had every right to ask him to leave and to have him leave.
He had the right to ask. You can always ask, right?
Well, he had the right to. Well, he had the right to an ever escalating series of steps to get him to leave.
Yeah, I mean, sure.
But then he's being a Richard in the eyes of the community, and he should be ostracized accordingly.
Hey, let the community get some property up and give it to River Dave. Why am I the guy that's got to do it?
Well, you inherited the property of which there was already a tenant.
So, well, he wasn't quite a tenant. He was more of a squatter.
Well, not if he had permission. If he had permission, he's not a squatter.
But I don't know if there's a financial agreement. A tenancy, would give the idea of the contract and the exchange.
Okay, well then pick a word that means tenant without the financial obligation to pay rent.
Squatter.
I don't know what that's not a squatter. Squatter has no right to be there. What's that?
He's on somebody else's property. At that point, he had no permission to be there. Again, the permission died with the old owner.
Yeah, but you have to have knowledge of that, man.
True. Again, I don't know what the first meeting was like.
Yeah, but you're presuming that River Dave was told to leave and didn't, right? But up until the point that he was told to leave, he had no knowledge of the new owner. The owner had no knowledge of River Dave until the government intervened.
He was making use of media in order to be able to counteract it.
Okay.
Once he came on Free Talk Live, he knew all about it, right? He knew all about the situation, and again, he should have.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
A couple of times.
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So of course he should have been making arrangements to leave somebody else's property, because again, you shouldn't be able to extract your existence out of somebody else without their permission, right?
Okay.
Yeah,
the property owner is still a Richard, and screw that guy.
Well, again, the non-aggression principle, if you believe in it, is not the measure as to whether or not you're a nice person. It's the measure as to whether or not you're a criminal.
You're right. But I can still hate that guy. I can still wish bad things upon that guy for being a Richard to River Dave. And I can encourage other people within the community to not do business with him. I can encourage him to leave the community for putting, an elderly individual into that circumstance, or, exacerbating the circumstance, right? I can say that he's a bad person that ought die of starvation because no one's willing to feed him.
But you have to agree with, if you're going to be within the context of liberty, you'll have to say that he had the right to do it.
Sure. And screw him anyway.
And, Free Talk Live is not infallible. We do have a variety of hosts and co-hosts, and we have been wrong before, and we'll be wrong again, I'm sure, on something at some point.
Next line Peakless is on.
Usually there's one person that will bring up something, contrary, shed the light on that one facet.
Well,
and I don't believe in this particular instance they did.
And this is why we have folks calling, right? Particularly like yourself. I've really enjoyed this call, by the way, because, it takes a variety of scenarios. It takes a variety of personalities to discuss these things and vet them out.
I've been listening so long that when I first heard of the AMP program, they were asking for help to get past the 33 stations that they were on.
Nice.
Before the move. And it's been probably about 8 or 10 years since I've called. But I listen to Free Talk Live every day. And I think it's a wonderful program. It is a wonderful service. And thank you very much for what you guys do.
Hey, Kurt, thank you so much for the call tonight. We hope to talk to you again. 603-283-6160 if you'd like to join us tonight. I'm trying to, I can't remember the specifics of what exacerbated the River Dave situation. At the time, I remember being here when he called one time, and then he called another time when I wasn't here. Okay. And so those two calls, at least when, the hubbub was going on, he called, I think, more than that 2 times into the show. But when that was going on, I'm trying to remember exactly what exacerbated the situation. I feel like it was the current, the new owner of the property didn't go and ask. He just immediately called police.
Oh, well, then definitely screwed that guy.
Is what I think happened, but I don't remember. I've said it out loud, but I don't know if that's factual or not in the situation. And that's what I find, that owner being a Richard.
Yeah.
Right.
My opinions vacillate based on the information I'm provided.
Yeah.
Right. So if you say that he just called the cops on River Dave, well, then screw that guy.
At least according to River Dave, right? That was the impression that I got.
If Steve didn't call in to defend his position within the community, right? And then what can you do? If you're going to make yourself an outlaw within the community of which you're operating, well, then tough. Then you got to start defending yourself.
Right. Let's go to, I believe this is Rob in Vermont. Rob, you're on Free Talk Live.
Oh, what's going on, brothers?
Much, man. What's on your mind?
Oh, boy, I tell you, it's weird being the same age as old people. I'll tell you.
Oh, yeah, you don't have to tell me, brother.
Yeah.
I know you got a couple years on me, but
young people, who needs them?
I think that River Dave he moved to Maine, didn't he?
No clue.
Yeah, I'm foggy on like the outcome of that.
Yeah, I remember the story, and he was, bullied off the property. They burned his little shack down. It was really kind of sad.
Yeah, that's the part. Don't be a Richard, right? There were probably more peaceful, economical ways to handle it than booting off an old guy and burning down his house.
I just consulted the Magic Rectangle, and from, let's see, updated August 18th of 2022, River Dave moves out of New Hampshire and returns to Maine. So, it's from WMUR.
In that case, right, if Steve ever, posted anything, not online, but, just showed up on my property, right, it would escalate to violence real quick because he would have it coming. Oh, you're on my property now. You need to leave with a broken nose. Right? The minute he steps on anybody else's property but his own, he gets his ass beat.
So this just says Lidstone, that's River Dave, said he had to leave New Hampshire over his dispute with a different landowner since 2016 over a patch of forest near the Merrimack River that he called home for 27 years. A judge issued an injunction for him to leave after the landowner sued him, and another judge recently ruled that River Dave would receive a $500 a day fine if he didn't.
That would have went nowhere.
So apparently River Dave received more than $200,000 in donations from, the public, people who were sympathetic to his story, and that's what allowed him to get his place in Maine.
And the landowner used the force of the state,
yes,
to compel action.
I don't think, my personal opinion, I don't really think that he wanted all of this attention.
River Dave? No, he probably just wanted to live out his days in a shack by the river.
Yeah, he mentioned as much online. He was like, I barely even know how to use this phone.
Yeah. I mean, I remember him, calling in to Free Talk Live once or 2-3 times. I don't remember exactly how many times, but he was having a hard time just operating the phone.
Yep.
Yeah.
So.
All right. What else is on your mind there, Rob?
Oh, well, I'm almost finished up with my 5th decade of live.
Yeah?
Mm-hmm.
How's it feel?
Starting my my 6th decade here in a couple, 2-3 weeks.
Oh, man. That must have been rough as a kid. Birthday right around Christmas. Come on.
Yeah, totally. That sucks. A former drummer of mine had his birthday in right around now or whatever, and he was like, dude, I would get people go, here's your birthday and Christmas gift. I'm like, oh, you poor bastard.
You can have a Christmas present and a birthday card.
Yeah. I was thinking about this, Rob. You probably remember this. The phrase "drop a dime." Right, meant to call authorities on a guy, right? Man, that guy dropped a dime on him, right?
Because that's how much a payphone costs.
Yeah, the payphone, right? Do you remember payphones?
Oh yeah, God, I remember when there was no FM radio.
Now they're trying to get rid of AM radio,
right? What do we need this for? Amplitude modulation. Who needs that? We have frequency modulation. Okay. Yeah. That's what it stands for.
All right, didn't even know.
Yeah. That's right. If we lose AM and FM radio. I'll just hook up my analog radio and I'll be all set.
Yeah, I've been thinking about one of the things that keeps coming up in the libertarian community is there's a group of people who do radio stuff, specifically like ham radio stuff.
Oh, you got to get your license for that.
But they have classes that you can go and take, and I don't know if they're free or donation based or whatever. But like it keeps coming up, and I've been thinking about doing that because, just exactly what you're saying. From listening to this show, Rob, that the FCC claims to own the air.
Well, that's what they claim.
And if they don't claim to own it, then the FAA claims to own it.
Ham is worse.
And if they don't claim to own it, then NASA claims to own it, right? So government claims to own air, and so it's I think would behoove regular folks to educate themselves on stuff like ham radio and citizen band radio as it exists today.
Citizen band more. Ham radio, you got to pass a test and get a license.
But I'm thinking of it not for fun. I'm thinking of it more as a prep.
Okay.
Right? Because when communications go down, right, if the internet were to go down for some reason, what would people do? Well, first of all, a lot of people would be like, oh my gosh, I better call. Oh, wait, I can't do that. Oh my gosh, I better get online. Oh, I can't do that.
Okay.
Oh my gosh, I better send some smoke signals because most people don't know how to do that.
Yeah.
Right? So what would people actually do in those situations? Ham radio, citizen band radio, like these are the things that would continue to exist regardless of whether or not you got permission. Right. But it's the knowledge of how to operate one that I'm after, right?
That's fair.
Whether or not the license, needs to be acquired or whatever. I don't care about any of that. I just want the knowledge of the operation of said equipment and possibly the acquisition of said equipment for a prep.
Okay.
In that particular case.
I don't think it's unreasonably expensive to get a ham set up.
I don't think it is either, but I haven't looked into it, and it's something that keeps coming up in these, like when I look at like the calendar and stuff like that, I'll see that pop up every now and again within sort of the New Hampshire libertarian community.
All right.
I think they even did something about it at Porkfash this year.
I think that citizen band radio and ham radio, it's a different language.
It is.
And there's certain codes you got to know, and it's a certain way of being able to communicate and talk with people, and it's and if you got a good antenna from where you live at, you can talk around the whole world. I mean, an 11-meter antenna will take care of that.
There you go. Like I said, Citizens Band seems a lot easier to get into than ham as far as permission is concerned.
Yeah, absolutely. You could get yourself an Antron 99 and talk, throughout the whole state and probably Massachusetts and Vermont.
We could start Ham Talk Live.
$100. Huh?
Ham Talk Live?
Ham Talk Live.
Bring in a bunch of like bacon, some smoked ham, some spiral ham. Let's see what other kinds of pork chops, some kielbasa, some sausages. Hey, Rob, thank you so much for the call. We appreciate you, man. 603-283-6160.
Call tomorrow?
Call tomorrow. For those of you who miss Mark Edge, we're hoping he's making a guest appearance remotely tomorrow as a co-host. So feel free to tune in. If you missed any part of tonight's show, find the archives over at freetalklive.com. Thanks and peace.
Join liberty-minded voluntarists, anarchists, and libertarians from June 13th through the 16th for the 8th annual Fork Fest at Rogers Campground in the beautiful White Mountains of New Hampshire. Fork Fest is a fork of the Porcupine Freedom Festival, which has sold out in recent years. Fork Fest happens the weekend before the Porcupine Freedom Festival. Fork Fest is decentralized, which means that there's no ticket cost and no one is in charge. All you have to do to join the fun is reserve your camping site, RV site, or motel